Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. It's our Tombstone, the Quick and the Dead edition, Tim. Can you believe it?
I can't.
We're out here. Finally made our way to Tombstone. They allowed us in. And now we're going to get a little bit of the lowdown of the territory, Tim. Peter Sharayko is here with us. And Peter, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for having me here.
I love the look. This is what I wanted to see when I come to Tombstone, Tim. And we're going to put up some pictures so our people can see our guests. See, this is the look of the guy I want to be talking to about. I don't want to see some button-down Simpson T-shirt wearing guy here. I want a guy that looks like he knows Tombstone.
Well, I have my clothes on because you don't want to see me naked. Well, trust me.
Not yet, at least. Let's get some red eye in us and see where things go later. But
hey, I may be from Hollywood, but I'm not one of those.
Peter, thank you again for joining us. And you've got a lot of knowledge and have been involved in a lot of different westerns and movies like this. But Tombstone, why is there such a fascination, do you think, with Tombstone across the board? People around the world, you mentioned Tombstone and they light up.
Well, one of the reasons is that the gunfight in Tombstone was the most famous gunfight of the Old West. And when Kevin Jarre wanted to do this, he wanted to make it better than any other movie that's ever been done on that, and that's what we did. I had a good hand in that because we made most of the costumes. We supplied the saddles, the horses. I put the buckaroos in, which were all the Red Sash Gang, and I designed all the guns for it. So all the guns that the characters used are the same guns that the real people used. And that's what we did. Same thing with the gun belts, and that's the only movie that did that. And Joe Porro, who was the costume designer, made sure that everybody looked different. So if you look at that movie, you had people with red shirts and blue shirts and green shirts, buckskins like I had on. Everybody was unique. So when you saw a red arm just coming into the screen, you knew it was Curly Bill. When you saw anybody's particular look, and that look was kept the whole movie. It wasn't a small budget movie. It was a big budget movie.
Right.
But Kevin wanted to have everybody look the same. So even though it takes place over a 6-month period, everybody's wearing the same clothes.
I never noticed that.
In small budget, well, that way you could identify each character.
Sure.
If you look at some of the other movies, they're going to dress them all in blacks and browns and tans, earth tones. They always say, I want earth tones in movies. And it's hard sometimes to tell what character is what if you just see him briefly. In Tombstone, you can identify with every character immediately. And that's one of the things that led to that fascination by it. A lot of the other movies that are made, nobody looks unique. In Tombstone, they all do. So all of the fans, all the people that fell in love with Tombstone and made it iconic, you'll see them dressed. Now, this weekend here on our anniversary reunion, you're going to see people dressed like Curly Bill, Johnny Ringo, Doc Holliday, Wyatt Earp, probably some dressed as me, or Turkey Creek, and the audience is going to immediately know that's who that character was. If you look at any other movie, you look at Wyatt Earp, which was a good movie, but everybody looked the same.
Right, the same black short coats,
the same black, the same style, and there was no uniqueness to that movie. Tombstone has that uniqueness, and that's what made it such an iconic movie. Also, the way Kevin put the script together, he gave it today's look, or 25 years ago look.
Right.
So the Red Sash Gang was a gang. Were like the Crips and the Bloods.
Okay.
Normal people were afraid of them. Sheriff Bean was corrupt. You have the corrupt politicians involved. Who sides with the gangs? So if you look at that in today's current events, you'll have corrupt politicians who are saying, oh, MS-13, oh, they're just really nice guys. Then you have the other people. You have somebody like Trump saying, no, they're animals. That's the way these guys were. And then you had Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, you had the Earp brothers, and his posse, which was Turkey Creek and Texas Jack. These are just normal people who said, I want to live a normal life. But they were forced to fight the gangs. Normal people today can't fight the gangs. We're not allowed to do that.
No, right.
Then they were. That's why people cheer it, even subconsciously. They're looking at that movie and they're saying, I wish I could off those gang members that are selling drugs. You know, there's one scene in the movie where the cowboys are in the opium den.
Right.
And Wyatt and one of the other guys, he goes, it wasn't me, it wasn't Turkey Creek, it might have been Sherman McMaster's. He goes into the opium den. And you see this high cowboy, and he's reaching over for the pipe, but he reaches for Wyatt's butt line and sticks it in his mouth. And then you just see the shot of Wyatt pulling the trigger and jerking back. Every time that's shown in the movie theater or there's a crowd, the crowd cheers because that's what the crowd would like to do. Let's get rid of the lawbreakers. Let's get rid of the drug people. Let's get rid of the people that are ruining society. And that movie gave us that connection.
Right, that vigilante, the original vigilante justice, but it was actual justice. They were trying to clear up these places.
Exactly.
And then they were forced to. It was interesting, too, because Wyatt Earp wasn't really into law at that point, right? He had already
he quit.
backed out.
He wanted...
Hold on, boy. Yeah, I know. Hold on.
I'm going
to water my horse.
You want to answer that? You go over there.
I like that. Wow.
Right,
see, this is authentic right here. Yeah.
I mean, we have
Craig,
horses
it's Peter. I'm doing a radio interview right now, and you rang in on me, so let me call you back in a bit.
A horse named Craig, Tim.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah. A horse named Craig. He was at least polite about it. He walked off, and
they're more modern names.
I have a horse ring on there, not some silly.
Now
thing.
I'm glad mine is turned off because it's Beyonce. If you want it, you got to put a ring on it, ringer.
That's not.
I would have felt really.
Yeah.
If I knew how to turn it off, I would. But I'm totally inept when it comes.
No, that was awesome. What great timing!
Stuff.
But right, Wyatt Earp had pretty much been done. This was his brother's gig, right?
They all came here to. They were boomers, which means you come to a boom town. And they didn't want to work in the mines. They didn't want to be a pick and shovel guy, but they wanted to gamble. They were known to have ladies of the evening for the pleasure of people.
What?
Soiled doves, sealing experts.
Soiled doves, Tim. Wasn't that your
experts.
80s? Wasn't that your 80s band name?
Yes, soiled doves.
Sealing experts. I like that too.
I like that.
That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to make some money. They didn't want to be. They were forced into this fighting the. And they're not bad guys. They were just the cowboys. All the cowboys were run out of Texas by the Texas Rangers about 2 years before that, because they were rustlers. They were taking from the people.
Well, then they were bad guys, Peter.
Well,
I mean, that was the whole point, right? I mean, they were taking and they were starting to piss off Mexico.
They were letting other people do the work, and they were going to take it from them. They were bullies.
Sure.
And finally, and we all know what the bully process does, and people are afraid of it. And so the imagery that's there is that you had Wyatt Earp and Doc and his brothers and his posse stopping the bullying, standing up to the bullies, and that's what made people cheer, because that's what people want to do.
Well, and what's really amazing to me about this story is you have this high noon feel. This is it. We're squaring off. We're tired of the Earps and their crew. We're getting busted down for everything. We're taking them out. They're dead. They're gone. The Earps and everybody get the word. They're going to go stand up. And in this infraction, there's a lot of lead flying, but Earp and his group, they don't really suffer. I mean, there was a couple minor wounds, right?
Yeah, Morgan got wounded. Virgil got wounded. Morgan eventually gets killed. And
right, but not at this major standoff.
Not at that point. No, it comes from something deep inside all humans. If you're right, the Texas Rangers had a saying: if you believe you're right, You can charge hell with a bucket of water and win. There was another Texas Ranger deal where they were right. They were up for law and order. Mm-hmm. And there was a riot. They called the Rangers in to quell the riot. One Ranger got off the train, and the mayor of the town said, "But they only sent one Ranger?" The Ranger looked at him and said, "You only have one riot." And that is what happened with this. The Earps were very strong about what they believed in. Mm-hmm. And the Cowboys weren't. They were bullies. And when a bully gets beat up, he becomes the coward that they are. Right. And that's what happened with that's what happened with the Red Sash Gang, with the Cowboys. They got beat up. So in the gunfight, they were like, "Okay, we can bully you and you're going to run away." Oh God, these guys aren't going to run away. Now their second thought. One thing about a gunfight is you have to be deliberate. Mm-hmm. You have to take your time in a hurry. But if you have that question in your head, that's why today's people aren't really good in a gunfight. Police aren't good in gunfights. They'll fire 50 rounds and wound a guy or miss him.
Right.
10 feet away. They have to be deliberate. The Earps were deliberate. The Cowboys weren't. They were bullies who were stood up to. And now they have that question in the back of their mind. It stops them from going through with their action. And that split second is what got him killed.
Was Tombstone just a lawless place for a long time? Or, did it have its law, but it was very...
The West was not a lawless place, but it was. It had your whole group of people. Now, all these guys were in Dodge City. Dodge City was was thought of as a lawless place. Mm-hmm. There was a cowboy on a train heading into Dodge City, and or he was heading west. The conductor came up to him for a ticket, and he said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I want to go to hell." He said, "Get off at Dodge." And the Earps, the Cowboys, all these guys, they were all in Dodge. All of these boom towns saw the same groups of people, and so when we talk about lawless, no, it wasn't a man dead every day. It wasn't everybody fighting around, but it was certain factions of people who want to take over that thing. And you have to understand, in the West, one thing about movies, and we make a lot of movies, and we do a lot of things, and I'm talking with writers, and I'm talking with directors. Every movie they want to... Well, the guy comes from Texas, you know what I mean? And he's talking like that. I said, you don't understand. The West had people from Germany, from Poland, from Ireland. You had this whole group of different people coming in. So here in Tombstone, you had people coming in. You had the boomers coming in, but you had businessmen coming in. You had entrepreneurs coming in. You had people coming from all walks of life, and they had all sorts of accents. They were speaking Italian. They were speaking German. They were speaking Polish. So they got together. Whenever you have those different groups of people, you're going to have some animosity. You're going to have some anger, or people are going to be stepped on.
Yeah, we saw that out on the East Coast in Chicago, and you start blending that melting pot, and it doesn't always melt so nicely together.
It doesn't melt very fast.
Right, and then you've got this kind of area, and everybody wants their slice of the pie. They all have these dreams. Right, we're going to hit big with gold. We're going to hit big with silver. And this area was much more plumb with copper and silver. It was a silver mine,
yeah.
And
when Ed Shefflin found his tombstone,
and they so people came out here with a desire to be something and create something. And it's funny that
is why people came west. Don't forget, this was 15 years after the Civil War. Mm-hmm. The Civil War was still fresh in everybody's mind. Mississippi, I think, was the last state to join the Union, and they didn't join until 1874. Mm-hmm. The South was still the South. The South was totally destroyed, so everybody lost everything. So a lot of Southern boys came out west to try to start life anew. The Northerners were the same way. They lost a lot. They lost things, and they wanted to come out. So there was still a Civil War, and then you had all of this was a time of the influx of people from Europe, of landing on Ellis Island and starting to come out. The Germans came out because they didn't want to fight in the Franco-Prussian War. But when they got here, the only thing they could do was join the army, and the army sent them out to fight the Indians. You had the Irish coming out from their potato famine and that whole 20, 30-year thing. They couldn't do anything but join the army or become railroad workers to build the railroad.
Mm-hmm. Along with the Chinese, right?
And then you had the Chinese coming out, and the Chinese were cheaper, so the Irish got mad at them. So what do you think the Irish would do with the Chinese if they saw each other in a bar?
I hope on
and
drinks.
Course, Tombstone at that time had 110 liquor licenses, but they didn't have bars like the Crystal Palace or they had a few bars like that, but most of the licenses were some guy in a push cart with a barrel of whiskey and a tin cup tied to the barrel, and you could come up and buy a drink. All right, and there you have. But they had liquor licenses, so liquor flowed pretty well around here, and it was a Tony town. It was well to do. They had an oyster house where oysters were shipped in daily. Now you have to understand, these people are shipping this stuff in through Tucson, through Phoenix. The railroad was going to Tucson; it wasn't coming here.
Mm-hmm.
They had wily Apaches out there killing everybody. This is still the height of the Apache Wars. You still had Geronimo on the loose, so you had there was a lot of fear among people. There were a lot of things. If you went out by yourself, you might not come home.
Right now, from where we're at the Buford House doing this episode, when we first got here, they pointed out to, I think Lincoln had pointed out, and he said, was that where Geronimo's holdup was or something? He said, from here you can see where he was able to keep
Cochise.
That's what it was, right?
Cochise's stronghold.
Yes, Cochise's stronghold.
It was not that far. I mean, a day or 2 days a ride.
Right.
But it was still close by. So you needed the safety of the town. And then you had the people, you had a business guy trying to do business. He's trying to get his stuff. All of his supplies that were coming in were waylaid. They were robbed. Stagecoach was robbed. Wagon train was robbed. A mule train, they were robbed and killed. And they were killed. There was that war with the Mexicans, with the Indians, with outlaws, with tough guys.
Everybody's trying to cut a piece of the pie.
Everybody, and that's it exactly. Right. Everybody wanted a piece of the pie.
Well, except for the Native Americans who just wanted to keep the pie that they had, that we were kind of infringing on at the time, right?
Basically.
Right.
Yeah, basically. Right. It was a war. It was the Indian Wars.
Right.
And, this is one thing that I try to emphasize to people. It's the same thing with the Mexicans. This whole area, New Mexico, Arizona, California, was the... I want to say Hidalgo, but it was a Hidalgo purchase, or it was a purchase where we bought it from Mexico. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, we want to have the Mexicans come back in and we want to turn this area back into Mexico. And I always say, it's like you have a car. You bought a car, and you're driving it for 2 years. Now you sell the car. You got money for it. And 2 years later, you say, wait, I had that car. I want it back. Give it back to me for free. But you already sold it. And that's the mindset that's in there now. So you have to understand that back then it was Americans trying to build America from sea to shining sea. Mm-hmm. It was the Mexicans who are from the land of fleas and revolution that they just finished throwing the French out with Juarez in the late 1860s. Mm-hmm. You had a lot of Southerners from the Civil War going down to Mexico to fight for either side. They became mercenaries because they just spent 5 years in a war. And they had nothing else to do, so they could get paid.
They knew killing and they knew making money, and that was an opportunity to them.
Exactly. And then you had them coming up here. I mean, there was so much going on and so many things that could happen. So
much history.
You had to fend for yourself. You had to fight for yourself. You had to.
Feels weird, right? Tim living in Minnesota.
Yeah.
You kind of look out and you're like, so what big thing happened here? Well, we used to have a hockey team. They got taken away.
We had our fair share.
I know, but it's just like here where you've got Coach Ace's Stronghold, you've got the OK Corral, you've got the Earp Brothers, you've got Doc Holliday. You've just got, this and the wars, the mining. This was
You boys are from Minnesota?
Yeah, I'm originally from Chicago. He's from Minnesota. Yeah, we're there now.
Well, 1862, you had the big Sioux Uprising in Minnesota.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So you did have something.
Yes,
there.
And
in 1878, I want to say, or 76, it was the Jesse James in the Northfield Raid.
Jesse James gang in the Northfield Raid.
So Minnesota has its history.
We have our fair share.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
I stand corrected. In Chicago, us gangsters, we don't know nothing about all these cowboys and Indians.
Don't know nothing about border.
I didn't see nothing. I don't know nothing.
I don't know what you're talking about. Why do you think? That was an interesting time too, right? Wyatt Earp came out and Tombstone came out very close. The movies, it came out very close, and they were starring. They were starring big guys at the time. You've got Kevin Costner, you've got Kurt Russell, you've got an all-star cast, Powers Booth, Val Kilmer. There's some amazing people that are a part of both of these. But when you talk about kind of the pantheon of these movies, Tombstone seems to stand up and far away. And like you said, there's little nuances that were done during the movie to give it a different feel and a vibe. Do you think that's all it took, or? I get the feeling from watching the movies, simply the casts blended better together on the Tombstone lot, that they seemed like they actually they had a connection.
I give all the credit to Kevin Jarre, who was the writer and the first director, and he wanted to do something special. Mm-hmm. He wanted to make a movie that was special. Most people making Westerns don't want to make them special. They just, Westerns, it's a hot thing right now. Let's do it. And they go by, as we used to call it, Hollywood as usual. Mm-hmm. Kevin was emphatic about getting everything right. I want the hats right. There was a costumer that came in for a meeting with him. See, I worked with Kevin for a year before we started filming the movie.
Oh, really? So you were really deep in making sure that this
Kevin and I were friends. We rode our horses together. We used to have a thing called the House of Men Ride, which was once a week or twice a week. Kevin, myself, Frank Giorgani, who did the saddles on the movie, was my assistant buckaroo coordinator, and Gary Gang, who was one of the wranglers. We would go on a House of Men ride. Once a week at 9 o'clock at night, we would all meet at Gary's. Kevin had his horse there. Mm-hmm. I'd bring my horse up. Frank, Gary, we would ride up into the hills with 100 rounds of ammunition, live ammunition each, a bottle of whiskey, some cigars. And we wouldn't come back until the whiskey was gone and all the ammunition was gone. We'd come back about 12 o'clock at night. And while we were doing this, shooting off horseback at night up in the hills, Kevin would talk about the movie. He would say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. We're going to do, and we're going to make it right. So as he was writing the script, every couple of days he would call me up. He lived in Hollywood. He would call me up and he'd say, Pete, come on down to my house. It's at 2 o'clock in the morning. He would call me. He had strange hours. I called him the vampire because I called him at 10 o'clock in the morning one time. He said, what are you calling me for in the middle of the night? And he would give me 3 or 4 pages of the script and say, all right, go home, design the guns for that. So I would go and look at every character, and then I have 5,000 books on the Old West in my library. So I did all the research for it. And I would find out, well, here's the gun that Virgil Earp used. It was a Model 3 Smith & Wesson nickel-plated with ivory grips. So in the movie, he's using a Model 3 Smith & Wesson with ivory grips nickel-plated. Because that is, and it was an original from that time period. The guns that I carry in the movie are 2 single actions. One was made in 1882, one was made in 1889. They were both 4 3/4 nickel with ivory grips. I had the factory letters on them. Those were guns that the 82 gun could have been at this time in this period. But that's what I gave everybody. The shotgun that Kurt Russell uses is Wyatt Earp. Is a 3-trigger double-barrel Stevens 10-gauge. The Stevens 10-gauge is what Fred Dodge from Wells Fargo loaned him when he had to go kill Curly Bill. And I have a 3-trigger Stevens 10-gauge. That's what he's using. No other Wyatt Earp movie ever used that. See, writers, Kevin did so much research on it. And he insisted, I want this man to have this, I want this to have that. There was a movie, am I going to make a lot of enemies? Probably, but I have a lot of enemies. Man who doesn't have enemies is like a dog without fleas. There was a movie that was done for TV, and they had Wyatt Earp in it, and it was called, I think it was called Four Eyes or something. It was about a guy coming out from Chicago, coming out to Tombstone to be a optometrist. And they gave him an office, which was in the back of this old building that was falling apart, and it was dirty. And it was 1881. But the guy said, oh, yeah, nobody's lived in that building for 20 years. Well, Tombstone didn't come about till 1879. Writers don't think about this stuff.
Well, he was right. Nobody lived there.
Yeah, but there was no building there. Right. There was no tombstone there. But that's the
so
problem. That's what writers do. They don't care about that. Now, one of the things that happened on Kevin Costner's movie, which was a good story, but he's wearing a Buscadero rig, which is that low-hanging gun belt tied around the legs, and Tombstone doesn't have any of those. That gun belt, particular gun belt, wasn't invented until 1920. And it was perfected in the 1950s by a guy named Arvo Ojala. Now, Arvo was the technical advisor on the other Kevin Costner movie, Silverado, which was also directed by the director of
Wyatt Earp. Right.
So Kevin called a company called El Paso Saddlery. Now, in 1981, El Paso Saddlery made 100 gun belts, duplicating the gun belt from Spangenberg's gun shop here in Tombstone as a commemorative for the OK Corral. I had all that stuff. Kevin Costner called El Paso Saddlery, and Bob McNellis, who was the owner of it, after the movie, I went down there to buy more stuff, because that's what I do. It's hoka hey, as the Sioux say, it's a good day to buy. And Bob made him 50 righteous gun belts. Bob told me, he said, 3 days later, I got a call from Kasner, who was the director, saying a few expletives. What are you sending me? I'm doing a gunfighting movie. I want those gunfighter rigs. Bob said they weren't correct. I don't care. That's what I want. No. That's what happens. Now, in the audience, who is now more knowledgeable than they were 50, 60 years ago,
right, is
looking at this, and they're looking at Tombstone movie, they're going, my God, that gun belt is right. That gun is right. There was nothing in there that wasn't historically accurate for that time period. Nothing. Wyatt Earp had a lot of it. They had the wrong hats. They had the wrong saddle. They had modern saddles. Because the Wranglers in this business.
Next, he's going to tell me Wild Wild West wasn't accurate either, Tim. My heart's going to be broken.
I don't think the mechanical spider was right.
No?
No.
The mechanical... That was
the Will Smith one.
The Will Smith one. I thought the mechanical spider was great. But again, Will Smith had a Buscadero rig.
Yes, he did.
So did James West in Wild Wild in the TV series, because that was the norm at that time.
Yeah.
But was James West's olive color and peach colored and strawberry colored bandolero jackets and pants, were those normal for that time too?
The colors were.
Really?
And the bandolero jackets were. Now, tight fitting like they were on James West.
Yeah.
Robert Conrad.
He made it look good, though, didn't he? I love that when they leapt to Technicolor, you look like a flamingo or a peacock, every color under the rainbow in his outfits. But that is true, because they liked that, though, right? That was actually part of...
It was Victorian times.
Right.
Victorian times was... One of the sayings was, if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing. So if you look at pictures of Victorian houses... The walls are covered with everything.
Right.
Tchotchkes all over the place. Things all over the place. The guys, look at cowboy dress. They would wear chaps. They wear woolly chaps. Then they had cowboy cuffs. Then they started putting studs on them, conchos on them. They had conchoed belts. They had conchoed spur straps. They had fancy spurs with jingle bobs on it, just so you could hear me coming, because they were proud of who they were.
Right.
Now, earlier in the cowboys didn't exist until 1867. Before that, there were no cowboys. The first trail drives coming up from Texas, that's when the cowboys were invented. And they didn't have modern saddles. They had Texas Hope saddles. They had Mexican saddles. They were using old military saddles. Then the development of the cowboy saddle started coming about in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in Denver, Colorado. These started coming about, and that's what it was. By the 1880s, it was the norm. That's what we put on Tombstone. We put correct saddles on. There was a guy named Larry Wilson who's written about 50 books on antique firearms, especially firearms of the Old West. Larry was he passed away a couple of years ago, but he wrote all of these books and did that. I saw him at a gun show one time, and he came up to me and he goes, "Pete, I watched Tombstone 3 times and I didn't see a bad gun in it yet."
Nice.
And I smiled and I said, "You won't." Because that's what I do. I want to make it right. I want to make it so the audience goes, and if the audience doesn't know, people tell me, producers will tell me all the time, there's 1% of the people know what's right? And I go, yep, 1% of the people know what's right.
But it drives that 1% crazy, and they will talk about it and post about it and share about it.
330 million people in this country.
Right.
And if 1% is 3.3 million people, and if they spend $10 to see your movie, you just made $33 million. Tombstone, in its first couple of months, made $65 million because those people went back over and over again. Wyatt Earp made $18 million because the people went to see it and they went, oh, and the word of mouth got out. Nah, it's boring.
What was it like on the set? I know we don't have a whole lot of time left together, but what was it like on the set?
I could spend here and talk to you for hours.
No, I wish we could.
I could tell you. Don't ask me the same question twice because I don't remember how I lied the first time.
What was it like? What was the cast and crew in the setting?
It was you want the honest truth or you want a Hollywood?
No, give me the honest truth. With a little dash of Hollywood.
I'm incapable of lying. Every Hollywood people, oh man, it was wonderful. It was great. It was, there's the horse again.
I told you, we're running out of time. The horse is back from drinking.
I can't talk to the horse.
Go on back to the bar. He'll be out in a few minutes. God, Peter.
125 people either quit or got fired, including Kevin, the first director. It was a scary time. It was not a fun shoot to do. It was 115 degrees. We were all dressed up, and the new director yelled at everybody. People were quitting. The cinematographer, William Fraker, quit 3 times. Kept on coming back. Everybody was walking on eggshells. Nobody knew what was going on. Thank you. I'm not complaining. I'm looking up at the sky for those who are just listening. I knew it was going to be a special movie. I knew no matter how much they took the script apart, no matter what they did to it, it was still going to be a great movie. And when you have people like Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer and Powers Booth, Michael Biehn, when you have this kind of a cast, Sam Elliott, and I could go on and on and on. That cast, and I was so blessed to be part of that cast, to be part of that movie. And
Billy Zane, can't forget Billy Zane.
Who? Well, Billy Zane. Billy Zane's gonna It was.
Then there's that Stallone kid. What was his name? Frankie.
Yeah,
Frankie Stallone.
Frankie Stallone. Yeah. Don't crank it up. That cast, and Kevin handpicked that cast.
Right.
He went to everybody, and it wasn't. There were no auditions. There weren't. Okay, we're having an audition here. Your agent send a pit. No, there was Kevin calling each person individually, meeting them for dinner, meeting them for lunch, and he bypassed some people, but he said, okay, you're playing this character. You're doing this. You're doing that. That's why I play Texas Jack with the buckskins and the fringe and the fancy, because that's what I always wear. And Kevin said, Texas Jack. And I said, cool. How cool can that be?
Right.
Here, I get paid a lot of money to ride a horse, shoot a gun. Okay.
And where would I like to wear?
Hey, where would I wear all the time? So I still have my costume.
So there was some strife behind the scenes.
There was a lot of strife.
But could people tell that something remarkable was being made?
I can't answer for anyone else. I don't know.
Go ahead. They're not going to know.
I knew in my world that this was going to be special, and that's why I wrote a book on it. I don't have my books here. You can't advertise. I have a book called Tombstone: The Guns and Gear, which is in its second printing, and It's all the guns and holsters, saddles, clothing that we put in the movie so that people could stop arguing. Because people would say...
The horse is persistent, Tim. That horse is persistent.
To eat.
Yeah.
Because that's more people asking me, let's go, hey, we're at this bar, come on down here. That's one thing I like about being in Tombstone.
Right.
Believe me, when the hooch bird sings, I'm in the choir.
Well, we're going to have to catch a ride on your horse later because we're going to need to come down for the hooch. So.
I will have plenty. You know that saying, paint the town red?
Yes.
In the Old West, one of the terms for whiskey was nose paint.
Nose paint?
Nose paint, because you drank so much your nose got red.
Oh, right.
But yeah, that was it. So for me, I knew it was going to be good. That's why I wrote the book on it. I have another book out called The Fringe of Hollywood. And I was always wearing fringe, and it's the fringe of Hollywood, the art of making a Western. So I'll tell you my great story on that.
Please.
A producer bought the book last year, had it on his desk. I went in for a meeting. Now, as an actor, as everything else that I do, they don't connect those people with writing books.
Right.
So I walked in. He picked up the book on his desk. He said, "Have you read this book? This book tells you how to make a Western." I said, "Read it? I wrote it."
Nice.
We have raised the bar. That goes with my motto. We have my little company, Caravan West. We have this little motto: to copy me, you got to be good. To equal me, you got to be great. To surpass me, you got to be kidding.
Nice. That's very nice.
That's what I've done. I have devoted my life to making Westerns. Historically correct, on time, with quality, and under budget. And that's what I did.
This is going to sound like a goofy question, probably.
It is a goofy question.
Since you've talking so much about the whole look of it, why in Westerns? It's 1,000,000 degrees out here. Mm-hmm. Why are they layered in 14 layers of clothes? They've got leather on and ponchos on. And what was the idea? Are you trying to keep the sweat close to your body to keep you cool? What?
You mean the real West?
Right. Was that...
They didn't have a suitcase. They didn't have a closet to go to. They didn't have an SUV. They didn't have a motorhome. Everything they wore, they carried on their horse. So why not wear it? That's why
because it's 120 degrees outside.
and they took it off. Gotcha. You know, it's a lot of things that we try to straighten out in Westerns. Like, how many times have you seen a Western where the guy walking in the bar and he has that long duster coat on?
Right.
Well, he wouldn't. The duster coat was made for one reason: to keep the dust off your clothes. So when you wanted to go into a bar, you took that dirty, filthy, sweaty, disease-ridden coat off, put it on your horse. You walked into a bar with as clean a clothes as you could have. The bib front shirt. But
the long jackets look good on camera, and that's what they call it, the hero.
That drives me crazy.
They call it the hero jacket because it sways well when you move and it looks good.
It flies in the wind. No, it's not right. That same thing with chaps. Now chaps were only worn by cowboys. That was their working tool, but it was covered with blood, with sweat, with dirt, with grease, with oil. Cow stuff that they had to go into. Now, are you going to wear that into a bar to go and pick up a lady of the night, the love of your life for the evening? No, you took them off and you walked in. In Tombstone, they wouldn't let people walk into bars with spurs on because if you were dancing on the dance floor, you might trip somebody. They wanted to keep fights down. Mm-hmm. So in movies, they always have you always see the spurs, you always see the chaps, you always see the duster coat. It's wrong. It's the same thing with hats. Now, my hat is tilted up in front because when you see somebody riding, the wind blows the hat up like this.
Oh, sure.
When you see the guys wearing the Humphrey Bogart fedora, where it's tipped out like this,
right?
When you're riding a horse and the wind's blowing, you can't see. You lift up your hat, you lift your head, and now the hat flies off. This is what happens, and I try to be logical with the producers, with the directors. A lot of times they tell me, "Well, it doesn't matter. We don't care." Did you see the movie Hostels? No, I can see you didn't. Okay.
No.
I had so many questions about Hostels.
Okay.
And one of my friends was the technical advisor. And I asked him, I said, "David, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong." And he goes, I know. I go, "Why was that?" He goes, I pointed it out to the prop guy. And the prop guy's words to me were, "I don't care." And that's the problem with most Westerns. They don't care because people don't have the heart today to do a Western. We're doing one right now. We start filming on Sunday. And I'm here, but I've got 18 people working for me that I've hired. They hired a prop girl who knows nothing about the Old West. And I said to the line producer, I said, why don't you let me hire the prop person? I know prop people that know the stuff, that can do it. Oh, no, I have to hire. So this girl came in, and she has a whole list of stuff. These are the props I want. Mm-hmm. So we do the props, we do the costumes, we do the guns, we do the horses, and so forth. And I want 3 rucksacks. And I said, rucksacks? That's a 20th century term. Now, the Civil War, infantry soldiers had knapsacks, but there was no such thing as a rucksack. What do you want a rucksack for? Well, I want to have that in the camp where the outlaws, they're having a camp. And I said, how do they get that stuff there? Well, aren't they carrying it on their back? Yeah, I said, and she's in my library. I'm pulling out books. I'm like, look, thousands of pictures. Show me one with a guy with a knapsack on. Oh, well, how do they put it on their horse? Well, we're not going to have any horses in this. We're just going to have the scene. I said, sure, but they still had that. You lay the saddle down, and you have a campfire. And then they wanted the triangle or that spit that goes across the fire with the coffee pot hanging on it. And the pot. I said, how did they get that out there? Well, I said, they didn't have a pickup truck to put the stuff in. They had to carry everything on a horse. I said, what a guy would do in the wilderness is he had a can of beans. He ate the beans. He emptied out the can. They would always camp by a stream. He would wash it out, put water in it, boil the water, throw some coffee grounds in it, and that's how he made his coffee. Boom. They didn't have giant coffee pots. They didn't have all this stuff. Yes, if you had a chuck wagon, if you had an organized thing, but if you're just going out in the boondocks, every western town, if you look at a map, the old ones, the early ones, were 30 miles apart. And if you look at that, because a guy could ride 30 miles a day on a horse, so he could go from town to town, but he would get into town the next evening. The other thing you see in westerns, the guy rides in, he's been riding all day. He rides in, he ties his horse up, and he walks into the bar. Now, he would go and take care of his horse first.
Right.
His horse was his vehicle.
Sure.
That was his lifeline. He would
feed and water. There are some movies that does it right, because we've seen that, right?
He would go unsaddle him, but we don't have the time for that. We don't have. Yes, you do. You have the time to do it right. The trouble is, most of the actors today don't know how to ride, don't know how to shoot a gun. In the old days, in the 30s and the 40s, even into the 50s, when people were the studios had contracts. Mm-hmm. You were a contract player. That's why you saw a lot of, if it was Paramount, if it was MGM, if it was Universal, you saw the same actors, character actors, being in those movies. But a guy might be in a Warner Brothers movie, but you wouldn't see him in an MGM movie.
Right.
But the guy in the MGM, you'll see him in all those MGM movies. They put them on a salary.
Speaking of which.
Somebody needs celery.
Right.
I'm doing a radio interview. Let me call you right back.
These horses, they just stick their head in the window and snort at you.
We're having a drink. Where are you? We drink a lot here. That's the West was drink.
Well, we're going to let you go so you can finish drinking, but finish up with your story, and then we'll let you get down to the saloon.
Okay.
Got an impatient horse stomping on the front deck.
Easy, boy, easy. But that's what they would do. They would do the 30 miles from town to town. They would get there. They would take care of their horse first. Then they would go and have a libation.
Very cool. Well, thank you for stopping in and giving us some insight on what it was really like and working on the film. That's pretty cool to actually get a chance to talk to somebody who wasn't just on screen, but helped make the screen look the way it did and set that movie apart, Peter. It's great to have you here.
That's right. We did everything.
You did. And your horse is here to prove it.
And we did the horses, too.
Hold tight, everybody. We'll be back. We've got more Beyond the Darkness right after this.
Beyond the Darkness.
Hello, welcome back to the show. This is Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Along with me, Tim Dennis. It's our blown-out Tombstone edition, Tim. The Quick and the Dead. That's what we're talking about today on the show. We're in Tombstone, as promised. We are here talking now with one of the stars of the movie Tombstone. Michael Biehn is here with us. His lovely wife Jennifer also in studio. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's our pleasure.
This is, I got to be honest, there's very few times over the 12 years I've done the show where I get kind of fanboy. But Terminator, oh my God, Tombstone, and then, of course, Aliens, as I'm wearing one of my favorite Alien-related shirts, has been to be in 3 of the best movies I've ever seen. I just love those movies, and you have been such an integral part of each one of these. So it's really kind of a neat opportunity for me to get a chance to chat with you. So thank you for being here today.
Well, you're welcome, and I just have to, let you and your audience know that I was lucky, maybe, or in the right place at the right time to meet a guy by the name of Jim Cameron. And so he made 2 of those films that you mentioned, Terminator and Aliens. And, that because of those movies and The Abyss and, that kind of got me going good in Hollywood. And so I owe a lot to Jim. I can't believe it's gone by so fast, and I can't believe it's been that long since we did Tombstone. It's 25 years, is that right?
25 years this year, yeah.
25 years since it came out,
right?
correct?
Since it came out.
Yeah, I mean I knew Aliens was back there, and I knew Terminator was shot in '84 and everything, but I don't know. In your mind, you never get older,
right?
Until you finally going, that's not music.
You kids and your rock and roll music.
That's not rock and roll.
Well, this, because we are basically a paranormal sci-fi style radio show as well, I've got to ask
paranormal?
You. Right. Beyond the Darkness.
What?
I know.
Yeah, I didn't fill him in on all that. I figured you guys could creep him out. But it's also
sci-fi and pop culture. So we cover a lot of great topics. But as soon as we mentioned that we were going to be speaking with you in Tombstone about the movie and about your career, everybody started hitting me up. Of course, the question is, Linda Hamilton's back with a new Terminator. Is there any chance we're going to see Kyle Reese come back into this role at all?
Well, here's the situation. Jim Cameron has now got the rights back to the Terminator.
Right.
It was with a French company that ran it into the ground.
Yep.
The last one that came out with Arnold, coming back, was supposed to be. It was out of the theaters within a week. I mean, It was just, I guess, not good. I didn't watch it. So somebody bought the rights from that French company, and then Jim bought the rights off this woman. So he owns the franchise now.
Great.
Okay, so I guarantee you, from now on, every single Terminator movie is going to be a great movie. Really good to great.
Mm-hmm.
Very good to great, right in there. I mean, he hardly ever misses. And as far as I'm concerned, I see Jim quite a bit because we work out together. And, I've done basically 4 films with him, if you count the T2 flashback scene. And he's really responsible for my success.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I didn't have anything to do with it, but he didn't tell me he was making a new Terminator. He didn't tell me that he owned the rights to the new Terminator. In between punching each other and kicking each other, and he didn't. He's never said anything about oh, well, Michael, I'm going to be using you again. But the thing about Jim is he's a very, very healthy 63-year-old guy. Mm-hmm. And he just lives films, and he's a little bit like Ridley Scott. So I think that even though he's not directing this new Terminator because he's doing an Avatar, I think, we might work in the future again at some point. He's got Robert Rodriguez doing a film under the Lightstorm banner, and I think that it's like he's a studio now. So
yeah, that kid's going somewhere.
We'll see. I mean, I I've been doing this for 45 years, and I'm tired. Plus I have a 3-year-old boy that I'm chasing around.
Sure.
So I'm tired, and unless somebody like Jim comes along and says, "I've got something for you," him or Clint Eastwood or Woody Allen or something like that, I'm pretty satisfied with what I've done. I mean, I don't want to go down to Atlanta and shoot 12 episodes of The Walking Dead or something like that. Because why? When I have the resume that I have, I mean, I'm not going to, be, killing it in The Walking Dead like I did in Aliens and then Terminator. Right.
Now, they've also bandied about, and I know I actually had a chance to talk to you and Lance 2 years ago, I believe it was, Crypticon in Minnesota. We had a chance to chat briefly as we were one of the hosts for the program, and I had asked you at that time what was going on with the kind of reimagining or reboot of the Alien franchise under Blaukamp, right? And that was still a viable possibility, and I know you've been pretty vocal about that. Is there any chance we're going to see Corporal Hicks return in any of these Alien movies?
I doubt it. I don't know. Blomkamp came out with those pictures online, and Reddit went crazy, and all this, and Sigourney and him worked on Chappie together, and he had an idea for a script or an outline or maybe a full script, and she liked it. She wanted to do it, and they spent a year, kind of going around to the Comic-Cons and stuff like that, promoting the fact that they wanted to do this movie together, which would have acted like 3 and 4 and 5, like none of them ever existed, and just brought me back and brought Newt back. And at this point, Newt would be 25, 26, and you can kind of see maybe a passing of the guards, passing of the guard type of situation, because we're both getting a little old to be running either at or away from aliens. So they announced it. Ridley was going to be the executive producer, and I know because there were some special effects people that I knew that were starting to get money in to, just start the process. And then something happened. And I have to think it happened. I think that Neil might have said the wrong thing.
That's what I think, too.
But I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah, we were cheating.
We don't know.
We got to see a Hicks. The way they just kind of pushed you and Newt out and going into that third movie was such a heartbreak for the audience.
It was, and I don't know. When I say Neil might have said the wrong thing to Ridley Scott, I don't know. But Ridley Scott basically said, you know what? I'll do the next Aliens. So he came out with a Covenant, all right? Which I didn't see either. But it came out first week. Second weekend, it dropped 90%. Okay, so that's a bomb. That is an absolute bomb. So if you're a studio person, do people who live around here or live in Nebraska or live in Wyoming, whatever, do they know who Ridley Scott is? Do they know, or they just know, God, the last Terminator was terrible, or the last Aliens, last Aliens was terrible. I'm not going to go see any more of those. Do they want to put another $50 or $80 million into a movie that the last one did so poorly? And the thing about it is that the Terminator franchise was dead too, pretty dead. And now Jim's got a hold of it, and I can guarantee you that those will be great. But I don't know what happened. I just got a call. My only involvement in that whole thing was a call from Neil Blomkamp saying, would I be interested in, playing the role? And of course I said yes. And that was the end of that. And nobody talked to my agents, nobody, and next thing I knew, it was off. And the way I look at it is the third one, which we got cut out of. And I'll tell you who was, I think, angrier than me about it was Cameron. Because Cameron spent the last third of his movie saving Newt.
Right.
And so for them to have her, dead at the beginning of the movie, I think that hurt. That hurt him. And, I think it hurt Jim. I think it. When you create a character, you get close to her. She did such a great job. She was so wonderful in the movie, and I think it. I think it hurt. It hurt me. It hurt, but I think it hurt Jim more.
Did they talk to you on the filming of that second one about coming back for the third? Were they gearing up to that, or had that?
No.
Because we talk about a lot of weird stuff on our show. One thing called the Mandela effect, people having these weird memories. And one, I remember, shortly after Aliens had come out, there was a teaser trailer that had been released. And it was just a voiceover. And it was like, in 1977, we taught you that in space, no one can hear you scream. And in 1981, we brought you back. And in 1983, on Earth, everyone will hear you scream. And then the Aliens logo came out, and you see the Earth and a ship heading towards it. And I was like, oh, my God, they're bringing aliens to Earth. This is going to be amazing. And then nothing.
Well,
and nobody remembers that commercial anymore.
Well, but they did make the third one.
Right, I know they made the third one, but it didn't end up on Earth. It was another prison planet movie.
Right. Well,
I didn't know if they had talked to you about bringing it to Earth.
I think they had a lot of problems with the script.
Oh, gotcha.
And I mean, they had a brilliant director in David Fincher, who I think this was his first film. And Fox has a way of kind of like, pushing their filmmakers around, saying, do this, do that, and you're going to shoot this script or that script or whatever. And, he went on to win an Academy Award for Best Director. And so there was some talent there. The way that I look at it is I was in the best Aliens.
Yes, you were.
And I was the leading man star of the best Aliens.
And the best Terminator.
Well, I like to think that too.
Definitely, yeah.
I think that I like to think that too. So some people might disagree because they like all the action, but I think the love story in the Terminator really, was such a beautiful kind of contrast to all the action and violence.
Against the violence and the darkness. There was that thread of love that kept it. That was great.
Yeah.
So you've already broken my heart. Maybe no Corporal Hicks. Maybe no more Kyle Reese. At least we get to look forward to Tombstone 2, The Return of Johnny Ringo, right? Oh, you're killing me, Michael. Yeah. Let's talk about that. 25 years, Tombstone. This was a phenomenal movie. And we talked to Peter Schranko earlier, and I said, you've got a movie that came out right at the same time with Wyatt Earp, and then Tombstone. And Tombstone just kind of took on a life of its own. It had a totally different feel to it. And I said, was that, the cast looked like they actually enjoyed being a part of it. It wasn't this maudlin feel to it. And he said there was actually a lot of turmoil behind the scenes and a lot of things that were going on during the making of that. But coming at it from your perspective, why do you think that Tombstone blew up the way it did and is still so popular? In 2018,
mostly because it was written well and it was cast well. Okay, you've got 10 phenomenal actors in that movie, and there's a lot of good-looking actors too. So I think that helps with the women box office a little bit, And the thing about movies. The thing about like Tombstone, for instance, is when it came out, it didn't get great reviews. It got, 50-50 reviews. Just to give you an example, remember Siskel and Ebert?
Yes.
2 thumbs down on the Terminator, okay? 1 thumbs down and 1 begrudgingly thumb up for Aliens. Possibly the best science fiction movie ever made,
Agreed.
And so,
But they also thumbed down Star Wars when it came out, so obviously they were not to be trusted.
They were not. No, you really shouldn't listen to anybody.
Right.
But you look back and you go like, you will listen to these guys. They were so wrong, you know. So you never really know how a movie's going to turn out. And like I said, I feel like I was, and that also then gave me the opportunity to, because those films were so successful, to work with people like Billy Friedkin and do The Rock with Michael Bay, and you know, I got to work with some good filmmakers on some good projects, and you know, make a good living and send 4 kids through college so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, Tim, maybe Michael will adopt you and you can get through college after all.
I would love to get through college. That would be awesome. I only have 4 more years to go, so that'd be awesome.
Here's the thing that people say: you went to the you went to the University of Arizona, right? Yeah. I say, yeah, from 1974 until 1974.
Yes.
That's how long
that was a good bookend.
Yeah.
When you were doing this, I mean, you brought up the point that you had a good-looking cast, you had a good story, but man, you had a powerhouse cast in this movie, and you don't see movies like that anymore that have that kind of ensemble.
Here's another thing too: is you will not ever see, I don't think, another Western. My favorite Western is Then Forgiven. I mean, you know, I mean, that to me, we're a little bit more poppy with the way that we did ours. And the great thing about that movie is the vernacular that Kevin Jarre wrote, with the law dogs and Lunger, because he had emphysema, and I'll Be Your Huckleberry, and all that is throughout the entire movie. You never see another Western where they're not just talking like we're talking now, you know? And they didn't used to talk like that. They used to talk like, you know, the way that Kevin wrote it. Kevin wrote a beautiful 120-page script, 130-page script, you know, beautiful. Just, and everybody wanted it. I got a call from my agent, and I said, they're doing Tombstone, Kurt Russell starring in it. I'm going to send you the script. Tell me if there's anything in there you want to play. So I read the script, called my agent, said, I want to play Doc Holliday. He said, okay. Put down the phone. A couple of days go by. I get a telephone call from my agent, Ed L'Amato, who's a big agent. And he said, Michael, it looks like it might not work out because it looks like Val Kilmer's going to play that role. And are there any other roles in the movie that you saw that you were attracted to? And I immediately said Johnny Ringo. And, you know, actors know good roles when they see them, you know. They fight over them. They know in, you know, women and like, you know, like Gone with the Wind and stuff, you know, people up there. Everybody knows. And they just attracted every single person in that movie's, you know, got so many other great credits and they're wonderful actors. I mean, you know, you got, you know, Billy Bob Thornton, you know, you don't even recognize him at the beginning of the movie, getting slapped around by Kurt, you know, and it's crazy, you know, it's an incredible cast, you know. Powers and Bill Paxton and you know, on and on and on. I mean, right down to you know, everybody in it has got other credits, and so it had a great cast and it had a great script. The director Kevin, who wrote it, was very, very insistent on doing it exactly the way he wanted to do it. He wanted to approve your mustache. He wanted to approve your hat. He wanted to approve the holsters. He wanted to approve the horses, you know, rigs. He wanted everything to be perfect. And then when we got to shooting, you know, he had never directed before. And I don't think that he realized that it was as much of a collaborative exercise than a movie is. And, you know, he had Kurt there, who'd been making movies since he was 4 or 5 or whatever. And he had a lot of experienced actors. Val was there, and everybody was like trying to talk him out of certain things. One of the big deals too was he was shooting it like an old-fashioned Western, and we had an Academy Award-winning DP. I think I got this right. Sometimes I get them wrong because I work with so many good ones. But a guy by the name of, I think his last name's Fraker.
Right.
Chinatown.
Peter brought that up earlier. Yeah.
Done Chinatown and like all these great movies, and Kevin was not listening to him. He just was shooting it the way he wanted to shoot it. He was like, and he didn't listen to anybody. He wanted it his way. And, I remember having a conversation with him a week before he got fired. And because I liked him. He was passionate. And he really cared about his project. And I said, dude, you have to, this is like a football team, and you're the quarterback. You players have got to play for you because they love you. You play for each other. You don't play for yourself. And a week later, he was fired. One of the saddest things I've ever seen while I was working was I passed through the hotel after he had been fired, and he was checking out. I didn't say goodbye to him. I just, but he. Me, I walk out of a hotel, it's on my card, I don't give a shit. He's just been fired off this thing, and he was standing there, checking out of the hotel. And so what happens is, okay, we've shot 4 weeks with him, all right? It's a 130-page script, which would have made it like a 2-hour and 10-minute movie. Right. So Fox says, maybe we won't make this movie. And Kurt and a guy by the name of Jim Jacks, who was a wonderful producer, said, you know what? We're going to make this movie. We'll just start ripping pages out of the script, which they did. They ripped out, 30 pages of the script. A lot of that had to do with the Cowboys. In the original movie, it was a much grayer. There weren't such good guys and bad guys.
Right.
I mean, you take Wyatt Earp right now, and you talk to somebody and you say Wyatt Earp, and right away people think, oh, he's this great hero.
Right, the big lawman, right.
Well, he was a thug, Well,
you are talking to Johnny Ringo.
Right.
So.
No.
Colored by experience, apparently.
Grew up like as a bouncer in whorehouses, Married a hooker. Not that there's anything wrong with hookers. I'm not like, but he was a bum as far as I was concerned,
Sure.
I mean, from what I've read. And, he used to go up and bash people on the back of their heads with his pistol and so on and so forth. And, they moved into Tombstone, and the Cowboys were already there. There was, it was kind of their deal. And all of a sudden, these Earp brothers are coming in, and trying to push us around. And it was like, it is obviously something was going to happen, and I don't.
Michael's got the Lex Luthor thing going right now. He's the hero of his own story. This Superman's kind of a bad guy. Wyatt Earp, he's kind of a jerk. No, but I get your point.
He was a jerk.
Right.
I mean,
all of them. All the Earp brothers.
Don't try to talk to him about the Abyss. That's a bad guy, because that's not a bad guy.
Well, no.
That's a very ill guy.
Yeah,
he's got some problems, but he's not a bad guy.
Well, they were telling me there were aliens outside of that boat too, and I told you there's some aliens. Well, you might, since you opened the show by telling me that.
That's right.
Well, there you go. We're in a haunted house right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
If I could just see one ghost. Please.
Well, maybe we should sleep here tonight.
Before I die, I would love to see a ghost.
Have you seen him?
I would love to see a...
Okay, he's seen him.
Yeah.
Take us out.
Well, yeah. Show me one.
How about UFOs? How about aliens?
Here's the thing about aliens, okay?
We would be
This
dumb
is...
to think how can you can't say
who was talking about it? I mean, the universe is so massive, and there's so much out there that you can't imagine there not being a
life force out there,
life form of some kind out there someplace, like in maybe other universes or whatever, you know. And we don't know. We know the Big Bang Theory, and that's about it, you know. So we don't really know. But what's interesting was the UFOs all over the place in the news when I was a kid in the 60s and the 70s, and you see these pictures, and that's a UFO, that's a UFO. Well, now, everybody in every country in this world of ours is carrying a camera. Mm-hmm. So where's all the pictures now? Where's all the alien, you know, shots now? You know, the only time
they're out there. You just have to find the right place.
Well,
I'm telling you, Trout Lake, Washington. I've thrown this out to anybody out there. If you ever want a place to go see weird phenomena in the sky that makes no sense, the Assetti Ranch in Trout Lake, Washington. I've seen craft. It's, and I understand you're like, yeah, you're a radio show host that's talking about the paranormal. I am a skeptic.
No, you seem very level-headed.
Right. I want to see, I want to believe, like all of us, right? We want to have those weird experiences. Like you said, I want to see a ghost once before I die. I don't believe everything that people tell me. You know, we're going to stay here in the Buford House and sleep overnight. I've heard all the great stories.
Let us know.
So Tim and I are hoping tonight something occurs.
But
there are places you can go. Right.
Yeah.
I used to live in Lake Havasu, and I would drive from LA to Lake Havasu, and there's an Air Force base out there, and I'm sure that I saw the first stealth fighters.
Oh, sure.
Out there. I mean, because I'd be driving along, and all of a sudden I'd see this thing. And it was huge, and it would just fly like right past me, you know. And it was like it looked like a UFO, but it wasn't. It was, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to think I was, you know, like cracking up or anything. Right. You know? I saw a UFO on the way home, you know. But years later, when I saw a stealth bomber, and they were, you know, letting people. They were in shows. Flying shows and stuff like that. That's what I saw, and now I know that's what I saw. But to answer your question, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that there isn't life, some type of life of some form in this universe or any other universe. I mean, because it's so massive, it would be almost...
wouldn't you think it would be arrogant for us to think
arrogant
that
is a good
way?
word.
I mean, we've had these conversations, and
Michael, I
think it would be arrogant.
I've got to ask you a question. Being as close as you are to Jim Cameron, now he's written a lot of sci-fi.
Yes,
he seems to have this very...
You want to know what... I'm sorry to interrupt, but you want to know what Jim Cameron says when that question is asked?
I do, yes. That's one of the questions I have.
Go ahead.
But the other question I have is, for as much of an imagination as he has, as much as he delves into sci-fi and aliens and whatnot, does he get any, as far as you know, does he ever talk to you about, does he talk to government sources about aliens, and does he get any information from our government about aliens? Does he talk to NASA?
If he did, he wouldn't tell me.
He wouldn't?
No, I don't think so. Okay. I mean, you know,
and the minute he did, you'd hear doom 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 doom. They'd have to erase him from the timeline. Doom 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 doom.
Yeah, if he told me, and then I told somebody else, and then they told somebody else, you know,
you'd have to come back from the future to.
I've been on a show with Jim before where they've asked him whether he believes in.
UFOs or alien life
off the planet Earth, and his answer is, I don't know.
And the truth is, we don't know.
I don't know, and I don't know about ghosts, and I don't know about zombies. I haven't seen any. Remember Bigfoot?
Go hang out at the bars tonight at the end of the night at Tombstone. You'll see a couple of them wandering out, I'm pretty sure.
Some zombies.
Oh, no.
that I...
Moaning and staggering.
I used to be a pretty good zombie myself.
Sounds like this weekend's going to be some fun.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. I want to thank you for stopping in. And Jennifer, you guys are working. You've got other things and projects going on. Why don't you catch us up on that?
I'll catch you up super quick. Basically, Michael directed and wrote a movie called The Victim. It kind of started us off. It was myself and him and a small cast, and we did it for a really small budget.
Excuse me, honey, and keep your thought. Terminator, low budget movie, $6.5 million. This and 11 weeks of shooting. This we shot. I wrote in 12 days. Did pre-production while I was writing it, and we shot it in 12 days for $100,000. So when you see the movie, whenever you see a cabin in the woods, you always know it's probably going to be a low-budget movie. And
we thought, it did so well. It got picked up by the Weinsteins and Stars and, Anchor Bay, and, it's in Walmart, and it's here, and it's there. We'll keep going, and it turns out we ended up making movies for less instead of more. I think in the future we're going to start doing less volume and more like 1 or 2 a year, maybe 1 every 2 years, and do them for more. But what we have been able to accomplish is a lot of films. We're still in post and prep on 1, post on 4. We have about 15 out now since then, and that was only in 2011.
Wow.
And they're everywhere, or they're going to be everywhere. And our films are small, but we are giving people a shot at becoming filmmakers, people that might not have had a chance, people that might be big actors that might not have been able to write something, like Angus McFadden, who wrote something that's about to come out, and he starred in it, but he got the opportunity to write it and produce it and make decisions that nobody else was willing to do. They were like, just here, let's pay you a bunch of money and come work for us.
Like a miniature Robert Corman.
Oh, Roger Corman.
Roger Corman.
Robert Rodriguez was the inspiration. I know why you got a little jumbled there, because one of our main log lines is Rebel Without a Crew, is like, that was directly from Robert's book, and Michael got motivated from Robert. Jim watched Michael's movie, actually, when we did it, and Michael took it over to Jim's house and forced him to watch it.
I didn't force him.
No, not to watch it, to watch it in a specific way. He'll tell you the story. And then
we're probably going too long.
I know, but this will be the last. This is a great story. Anyway. But just check out Altered Perception. It just came out. Now he'll tell you the story of the victim.
Shot day for night.
Okay,
so we shot it during the day, but because they can do something with the camera and then do something, when they get it back to the lab or whatever, it looks like night. And you see the old cowboy movies that look terrible.
Mac computers were perfectly calibrated.
But now you can do a pretty good job with it, And I was working with a filmmaker named Salve Jens on a movie called The Divide. And if your listeners have never seen The Divide, they should see The Divide.
Yeah.
Great acting
Hardcore.
in that. And
Milo Ventimiglia, Lauren German, Rosanna Arquette.
Yeah.
Incredible cast.
Where was it going? I thought I had a story.
You basically you drove to Jim Cameron's house with your movie, ready to throw it up on the 4D deal.
Oh, sure.
He went. He has a whole room for
our little victim.
He's got a theater, basically, with 30 seats in it and stuff in his home, to screen things, and. I came and they let me in and I gave them my my copy of the DVD. It was DVD.
It might have been a Blu-ray at that time. I don't know. It might have been a DVD, but
DVD, gave it to them. And the cameras themselves have to be calibrated correctly. Otherwise, the day for night looks stupid. It looks either like really light or too dark, right? And so they put it on. We looked at it, and it's two young guys, like 25, 26, 30, whatever. They look at it, and I go, "Nah, that's not my movie. That's not my movie." Oh, okay. Well, it's here? Okay. They put some filters over the top of the camera and put it on. I said, "No, that's not my movie, man. That's definitely not my movie." And because it didn't look right, you know. And by this time, these guys were getting nervous because Jim Cameron's footsteps were coming down the hallway. And Jim came in and said, all right, let's do this. And I said, Jim, we have a little problem here. You guys can't coordinate the day for night stuff, and it's playing either too light or too dark. And I said, what are you talking? Let me take a look at this. And he messed around with it, put it up. We took a look at it, and I said, Jim, that's not my movie. And he said, okay, well, let me do this and did that, did this, did that. Put it up. I said, Jim, that's not my movie. So he said, all right, what do you want to do? And I said, watch it on my computer.
He made him watch it on his Mac.
And watched my film that I made
in his 4D studio.
Yeah, on a Mac computer. And I felt like I was showing, Rembrandt, like a stick figure thing. So it wasn't really that important, but it's kind of a funny story. And those two guys, they were just like, their eyes were this big when Jim was coming down the hallway, and they hadn't got it fixed. But since he couldn't fix it either, they're probably still working for him.
Right. Very cool. Well, Michael, Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and coming back for the 25th anniversary. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see you all weekend, and
we'll be here.
Yeah. Come into the OK Corral with a microphone, and
we will. Hold tight, everybody.
Story or two.
We will be back. This is Beyond the Darkness. Hello, welcome back. We are rounding out our special explosion edition of Beyond the Darkness. It is the Tombstone Quick and the Dead edition. And we've been having a great time today talking with some of the celebrities that were part of the Tombstone movie. And now we're going to actually settle in for this next segment with some of the locals to talk about this haunted house that Tim and I are staying in this weekend. We're also going to talk about the history of Tombstone a little bit. We've got not only a historian here with us, Tim Faddick, who was on the show a few weeks back, he's a historian and works with the Crystal Palace, but we're also going to talk with Stacy Corbin, Ghost Hunters of Spirited Tombstone, which I love. She just wanted it to make sure it spelled the word ghost. Shrugging doesn't really work well on radio. So that's what we're going to get into. But, so here's the deal. First of all, I want to put out a very special thank you to our sponsor for this event. Budweiser, the king of beers, along with Caesar's Palace. No, I want to thank Lincoln Levere for sponsoring us in for this event. He knew this was kind of a bucket list item for Tim and I to make it to Tombstone, and he saw the opportunity. He worked out a deal to get us in here. He paid for our airfare to bring us out so we could do these episodes, and worked out a deal on where we could stay. Once he got out from behind the Circle K dumpster, he said, that's not going to work for these guys. No. And he dug around, and he was able to get us into a beautiful place to stay for the weekend that is one of the most haunted houses in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be discussing that in a few minutes. But a special thank you to Lincoln Levere. Thank you, Lincoln, for bringing us in and doing this, setting up the celebrities to interview. It's been phenomenal, man. We appreciate everything you've done for us. Thank you. And we're going to take you out for some drinks tonight and have a little fun. And you may end up naked in a cornfield. I'm not positive, but I think that's the way this thing works out.
Is there corn in Arizona?
I don't know. Here's the thing, though. Now, this is the part that bothers me most. All right, I'm prepared to come to a haunted house in the middle of Tombstone, Arizona, in time for the 25th anniversary for Tombstone, the movie.
Yeah.
And then the lovely couple that owns this house, the Buford House, Tim.
Yeah.
Historic.
Yep.
Significant.
Yeah.
Lots of crazy stories. We're going to hear some of those in a few minutes.
Very much so.
Ghosts in every room.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yep.
Some in the bathroom.
Yep.
Creepy fucking rooms.
Yeah.
With little, doors that open into nowhere.
I got a big old creepy doll looking at me while I sleep.
Thank you for calling me a doll. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But what do they spring on me, Tim?
What's that?
By the way, we've got scorpions. And here, no.
Rock you like a hurricane?
I wish I would be happy to. Although they are also frightening at this age.
They are.
They show me photographs, and this couple's a little loony because they have black lights, and they create a rave for the scorpion. Yeah, and they're synthing, and they're showing us, and then they start telling me the story, Tim. That don't worry because you're safe around the foot posts of each one of the beds. We put a little. Like a saucer filled with olive oil.
That's all right, Dave.
Right. In case, I guess, the Pope comes and wants to bless the bed frame. But I guess the scorpions, the creature, not the arachnid, not the band, won't go in there because it can't swim. And it's too stupid to realize you're not going to drown in olive oil. So
why don't you make a little swimming pool for him, Dave?
I would, but it's not my job.
All right.
You sound so far away, Tim. I feel like we're a mile apart
because
here.
I'm eating this awesome chili.
Yes, you are. Scorpion chili, I've been told.
Is it?
So they tell me that they put these little fucking dishes, Tim, fucking dishes. That's my way I'm going to say this tonight, of olive oil, and it keeps the scorpions from climbing up the banisters to get into bed with you. And then I'm like, what? And then John hits me with, oh, no, I forgot to do that this time. So we might have scorpions in our bed. But don't worry, because we can fend them off with fucking black light. They've given us black lights in our room, which again, I don't first of all, don't know in a hotel room that I want to be black lighting my bed sheets and floorboards. It looks like a Picasso painting in there. I'm going to look for, I'm going to be looking for scorpions before I go to bed. Then they're like, oh yeah, and shake your shoes out. I'm like, I'm indoors. What is this, 1657? I have to worry about scorpions climbing in the house and hanging out in my shoe? This is unnerving. Should I put olive oil in my shoe? That's the question I should have asked them.
Yeah, then they can't pole dance in your shoe, Dave.
That's right. Pole dance in my shoe.
Well, that's what they do in the bed.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I'm terrified now. So ghosts, fine. Bring them on. Demons, whatever. Alien abduction, I'm up for a probing. I'm like every other warm-blooded American.
Hell
right?
Yeah.
But you've got to tell me you've got scorpions in the bed, Tim. No bueno.
No.
I learned that while I've been here for a day. Spanish, Tim. No bueno.
Yeah, no bueno.
That means no scorpions.
No scorpions.
Spanish, I believe. Let's get started with this now as we wrap up our extra wide episode. We've got a lot of topics to cover tonight. And we're now doing roundtable discussion. We've got a lot of guests sitting at the table with us as we wrap up our final recording session here at the haunted Buford House. And we'll begin by introducing the couple that is allowing us to stay in their scorpion-infested demonic home. Yeah, thank you. From the new hit CBS TV series, Farrell and Goodspeed, CSI, Tombstone. We have John Goodspeed, Catherine Farrell. Thank you guys for opening your doors. Wait, he waits till the second I'm going to introduce him to take a pull off his beard.
That's right.
Welcome to Tombstone. Thank you guys for allowing us into your home and to stay the night here.
Our pleasure.
Yeah.
It's not really infested with scorpions. Right?
Yeah, not now it isn't.
You might have one get in once in a while.
Oh, my God.
And every time you say Goodspeed, take a drink.
Yes. Goodspeed.
Oh, I'm so drunk right now.
It's like Bloody Mary. Is he going to show up in our mirror this evening when I call for him? So you guys, we're going to hear from our other experts here, but this house is very haunted. And John, you were telling us on the way into town today, you're very skeptical. True. Regarding the paranormal.
Yes, that's
true.
true.
You also come from a background, you're kind of a big brain. You work
Math,
on
science, and engineering.
Right, yeah, name dropper. And you take some time with the science, you know what you're looking for, so you actually started setting some tools up around the house.
I did. We originally we put in a typical...
I wasn't ready yet, John. I was still talking. No, go ahead. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so tell me about the tools. The tools that you...
We put in a typical home security system. And on that Simply Safe security system, we started getting...
Hey, they're not sponsors anymore. You can't bring up their name.
Well, actually, it was some kind of homebrew system.
There we go.
And, now that I think about it. And what was interesting is we would get... alerts at, say, 3 a.m., very inconvenient times of night. And we would be back east, let's say, and we'd get these alerts. And I would go online and check all of the sensors and what have you. The alarm company would call and say, we've had an interior motion detector go off in the parlor or in the dining room or what have you. I'd go online and I would check, and we would be nervous. Maybe we'd have the marshal come out and check, but they wouldn't find anything. But what we started noticing was a correlation of going online and seeing that other sensors were also tripping at the same time. Turns out when the alarm company calls, they only tell you about one. They don't necessarily tell you that 2 or 3 others tripped within, say, 30 seconds. You can only see that when you go online. Then we became really intrigued because we would see that, wow, motion tripped in the parlor and a couple other places. Most intriguing to me, though, was the fact that the temperature changed. So we started seeing that the 4 different temperature monitors that we had, we would see that, say, the front hallway had changed in temperature by an amazing amount, say 4 to 6 degrees over like a 2 or 3 minute period, and not in a direction that had anything to do with the outdoors. Because my first thought was, oh, great, somebody just kicked in the front door, and we've got, that's why the temperature changed. But it would.
You can tell he's from New York.
Yeah.
Right? Well, great, somebody kicked in my door. I've got 4 hoodlums in my house.
Exactly.
And he calls the marshal. Barney Fife comes rolling up and Tombstone, I'll take care of this for you, Ange. All right, so you go on.
Well, and so that one thing leads to another, and by about the 4th or 5th month of this happening as regularly as every other week, and by the way, not happening at other properties we had. This was unique to this house.
And we will talk about the other property, at least the name of it. I have to clarify.
Sam and Adobe?
Yeah, I have to clarify it for my wife because when I talk to her about the fact that I spent a lot of time there during the weekend, I don't want her thinking it's a strip joint in Tombstone.
Indeed.
The pink Adobe.
Indeed.
The pink Adobe, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I got plenty of dollar bills.
That's right. All right, so none of the other alarms are being tripped off at any other locations.
That's correct. So we thought that was rather odd. And concurrently with all this, I've been working...
Could it be scorpions setting off?
Well, we actually did theorize about that. We theorized about, mice, rodents. I mean, certainly those things are possibilities, but we have things positioned. In fact, there you go. There's one behind me. They're positioned so that that's really an unlikely source of event.
Okay. Unless it's a really big scorpion.
Right. So if you get to the science behind the motion detectors, it's not so much that they know about motion. What they know about is infrared. They know about heat detection going across their array of sensors. So what they call motion is really simply one array after another seeing a temperature change. So I then connected some dots, and I'm developing the new next generation 911 system for New York City, which involves my doing a lot of work. Well, they're a big city. So
no, that's pretty big, yeah. As far as cities go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's no Tombstone, but it's pretty good.
Exactly, yeah. They don't have any Adobes, and they're not pink. But the thing is that I decided I would take some of the technology that I've been developing for cellular phones in New York and that we will use in the public safety arena. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start testing that code at the Buford House because it's all applicable to what we're doing in the next generation 911 systems, which are designed to pinpoint your precise location so that if you make a phone call to 911 and you collapse on the floor, you can't fully explain what's going on, we can precisely, in a vertical city like New York, you might be on the 55th floor, 54th floor, we need to be able to know that you're there, and right now with current technology you can't do that.
Good news for you, Tim. Self-erotic asphyxiation, they'll now be able to find you quicker than ever before.
Awesome!
You may have to explain yourself.
I never do. I'm fairly passed out.
So we promptly took 6 or so phones, and in fact you can see them like right over here on the table.
Sorry, listeners, you can't. Screw you.
And so not to name drop or anything, but they happen to be, I believe, Samsung phones, but it'll work on any phone. These phones sense the minutest temperature changes, humidity changes, magnetic field changes, a sound, various RF signals, both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. And so what's very interesting is once we did that and the alarm company would call, then what I would notice is if I looked on our servers and checked the log files of what was happening, the phones themselves were picking up very bizarre events taking place. And by that I mean when the motion detectors would go off between 2 rooms, they might be reading, say, a 6 or 7% change in humidity. They might be reading, for instance, a drastic magnetic field change from one room to the next. And I believe I was telling you earlier, I'm more of a debunker. So my way of looking at it was, well, maybe there's a bat flying around the house. Maybe there's some, and maybe it's landing on the phone or doing this, that, and the other. But the trouble is, so far, I haven't been able to come up with a good cogent theory to explain how, say, 4 or 5 different sensors in the house would corroborate each other. So in other words, when the alarm company's sensors feel something, if you will, at the same time that several of our other devices are feeling things, because again, the alarm company sensors are just on or off. All they say is, I saw something and it's an event. Whereas my sensors are actually looking at the minutest details, and my software is sitting there looking at moving averages to decide whether or not this is a true startling change or just a gradual sinusoidal type change. So, there.
Do you have a thesaurus, Tim? These are big words we're not used to on this show.
I understand.
Sinusoidal? Samsung, yeah. So what you're saying is we may be able to measure paranormal activity.
Well, I guess I'm trying to stay on the scientific side. What I would say is...
No, come to the dark side. It's better here.
Okay. So what I would honestly tell you is that I do not see what I would call good scientific explanations for how, say, humidity can change by, say, 6 percentage points over the course of, say, 90 seconds in one room and then another room and then swing back to normal. It wouldn't be typical to say that many sensors could all be making a mistake at the same time, because even that would be very bizarre to have the mistake rotating through the various sensors.
Right, because they're not hard cabled into one another either.
They're absolutely independent. They're sending their data back. Actually, these things aren't even going through Wi-Fi. They're actually sending it all cellular, back to 2 different carriers. Again, we don't mention trade names, carriers. Mm-hmm. And so, and then that goes back to our servers. And once it reaches our servers, I store it for posterity forever. So what happens is that over time, I'm building a lot of history of those events, and that allows me to have it learn, kind of a form of artificial intelligence. It learns as time goes on that...
artificial intelligence.
Don't even talk about that.
We're living in a house tonight with artificial intelligence.
Which is good, because sometimes it beats my native intelligence.
Actually, we should tell them when we used it the night we heard the bed move upstairs.
Okay, very good. So when things go bump in the night, it's,
I like this.
It's good. It's good to be able to verify it. You know how sometimes you can be startled and you'll wake up, but you're really not sure whether you did just have a dream and you're just sort of coming back into reality or whatever. You just don't know. And you listen intently. You sit up in bed. You're not hearing anything, but you feel pretty convinced that you were startled awake. Well, a couple months ago, that very thing happened. We're lying there, and it's like probably, 2:30 in the morning, Kathy?
Maybe 3.
So all of a sudden, I'm startled awake, and I woke Catherine up at the same time just by the fact that I really startled and kind of sat up. And I said, I just heard a loud boom. I mean, a real crash upstairs.
No, you heard like furniture moving across the floor.
To be very precise, and I thought this would sound
podcast and separate you two.
Okay, so I didn't want to be too geeky about it, but my exact description to her was: it is as if a piece of furniture with a bad caster just got shoved about 6.5 inches across the floor. That kind of sound is what it really was.
Is this real 6.5 inches or a guy's 6.5 inches, John?
Excellent point. Well, since I was only semi-conscious, I might have only heard maybe 3 or 4 inches of it. But
you're rounding up. I get it. I do the same thing.
Yeah. So at that point, I actually put my head back on the pillow. She's like, "Well, it's probably nothing. You were probably just having a dream." So I put my head back on the pillow, but I was disconcerted. I thought, well, no, I think I did. And then all of a sudden it hit me. Wait a minute. I can check on ICUC and see whether it heard anything. So I just grabbed my cell phone and I looked at my own site where I was publishing the stats, and I woke her up and I said, it wasn't my imagination. 5 minutes ago, all of the sensors picked up the noise. And so we did have some trepidation, because I could see that the loudest sound was indeed from the upstairs, one of the upstairs bedrooms. So we got out of bed and we boldly went up there to face off with...
we creeped up, like turning every light on in the house.
Well, that's not the way I would describe it, but anyway. As I recall, I went first, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
You were brave.
So,
so you had a cushion to fall on when you turned and ran and surf your wife down the stairs, I know.
Yeah. And then we peered into each bedroom. Actually, we knew pretty much where it came from, what we call the Maison Dorée room.
Yep.
And so we knew where to walk. So we went down, tiptoed down, peered in, and honestly, getting back to science again, right? We thought we would find a picture had fallen or just some other thing, except for that scraping sound. I really did have it was a very distinct, probably 2-second long, just like you were moving heavy furniture on a bad caster that was turned sideways. We found absolutely nothing. There was nothing. I mean, I really expected to find a piece of furniture shoved away from the wall. And if that was the case, I don't know what we would have done. That would have been, I guess, time to just put it in Airbnb and not actually live in here anymore. But
oh, yeah, the scorpions are fine, but heaven forbid the ghost moves a piece of furniture. We're out the door. Different perspectives, Just sell it to Tim and I. We'll be happy. I'll take it off your hands right now, $22,000 cash. Do you have $22,000 cash, Tim?
I got $1.
Yeah, we're in trouble. All right. So how does that shake your skeptical paradigm that you're scientifically starting to...
I can honestly say that because of the feelings that various friends have had, we indeed do have friends. Friend that was only a handful, and indeed a friend that came, Lydia, when she came with us. When we bought this house, the very day that we looked at this house, she happened to be visiting us, so she came with us to the house, and I can sincerely say, she had bad vibes. And by the way, we knew nothing about the history. All we knew is I'd heard, we already lived in Tombstone. I already knew that it was a historic house. I really didn't know anything or have any consideration about haunting aspects. So the point is, when we came to the house, Lydia had no preconceived notion whatsoever. To her, it was just some boring visit to some house that maybe we were going to buy, that I wanted to buy, because Catherine certainly was also feeling somewhat dragged along. And when we came into the house, I fell in love with it probably 10 feet inside the front door. Lydia actually stayed behind us. The funny thing is, we kind of turned around and we're like, where's Lydia? She was standing out there on the porch and said, I don't know. I just feel uncomfortable. I don't know what it is. I don't really like this. We thought that was very strange. We then proceeded ahead. Once we found those concrete tubs, I was sold the moment we came to the concrete bathrooms.
I was in love with it too.
There are these sunken tubs that you saw earlier. When they got that early water in Tombstone, they made the best of it. I have not personally felt anything, but I think that's because I'm very thick. I don't think I'm very intuitive or whatever you'd call it about these things. But many of our friends, honestly, are so uncomfortable they won't even stay here. I mean, they just genuinely won't stay here. They are not willing to do so.
Catherine, is it hard to live with a guy that's just shy and unable to talk?
Not at all.
All right. Well, I want to jump over real quickly to Stacy Corbin from Ghost Hunters of Spirited Tombstone. And if you can get a little closer to your microphone, Stacy. So the Buford House, right? They had no clue of the historic and haunted relevance of this place. What did you know about the Buford House before they took over?
Oh, well, I've been here for 7 years, and I've been itching to investigate in here. That's all I've heard about is Buford House. I can honestly say, coming home at about 3:30 in the morning from a different investigation, I was driving past here, and from your upstairs window, I don't know what caught my eye, but something caught my eye, and I turned. There's a face looking, and the house was empty. So I stopped my car out there, and I'm just sitting there looking because I'm trying to decide, is there a living person in there? Is it a ghost?
Oh, good.
We actually had a tourist take a picture through the front window, and he came up and said, hey, I took a picture, I want to show you. And it was a figure of a man standing in the front window. He had like a black cowboy hat on. So you're not the only one.
Well, it dove out of your window at me that night. Apparently, I sat there too long.
It dove out the window at you?
Yeah, because I was sitting there watching it because I'm trying to see, like, is there a living, breathing person in this house? Because it's always been empty. So I'm watching it, and it kind of just went back away from the window, and then it just came all the way through the window and towards my car, and I was like, okay, going home. Apparently, you don't like me out here. So, I mean, I've heard a lot about this house over and over.
And the stories that you would hear about this house, what was it?
I've heard about people being very uncomfortable, that there's a man here that they're uncomfortable with. I don't know if it's true or not. It was definitely a man I seen that night.
Did you know any of the history of this house?
I don't really know the actual history of the house. That's probably going to be more Tim over here that's going to know that. I just look for ghosts.
That's all. Just looking for ghosts. And you've only been here for a few, about an hour and a half tonight, and you've had some weird activity.
Yeah, we've had Patricia and I walked through the house. We got several hits on a periscope, some on the anomaly meter. We definitely got 2 hits on the K2 meter. I just brought some basic equipment, but we were definitely getting some...
Did it happen in the Oriental room? Is it the Oriental room? Chinese room? What's it called?
Oriental. After the famous saloon in Tombstone.
Okay, good. So I had it right. The Oriental room? Was there anything going on in that room?
We never made it there. We were in the one with
Something
the 2
too
beds.
dark and terrifying?
No, because you called us down here and told us it was time to start.
You were a bit of a kill.
You interrupted us.
Oh, so you were in the most haunted room, though?
We were in the one with
the Crystal Palace.
We were in the one with the 2 beds. We were getting some hits on the periscope in there.
And that indeed is one of the classic rooms that a lot of people get uncomfortable and don't even want to enter the room. And I'm very sincere when I say that. To me, I find it a little strange. Again, when I say I'm kind of thick, like I don't feel it exactly. But Catherine, you had that experience actually being in the bedroom where you felt like someone grabbed the back of your calf, right?
Yes, I did.
So, and when it used to be a B&B, that was a common kind of thing where people would feel like there was a sudden physical touching or presence, either stroking your hair or your head, gentle, not necessarily feeling threatening. But
Tim and I have been head up. You guys keep talking. There's a little head stroking involved. I'm all for it.
Be back in about 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah. So that's pretty. Now I will be honest with you. That's pretty cool. But I'll tell you, first up, I've walked through the house. I haven't had a bad vibe in any of the rooms. And I don't know if that's because you guys are just so lovely and bring a great charm and elegance to the house. But that room creeps me out for a totally different reason. First of all, it's got those 2 little, twin beds in there. And then you've got this, short little closet with slats. And there's 1 slat missing. So it looks like the quintessential, hole in the wall this thing is watching you from. So, like a good Marlon Perkins, tonight I'm going to send Tim into that room by himself to stare into the black void.
Well, you probably noticed in your room...
in my room?
Yeah.
No, let's stick with the crystal room.
Well, they're actually, in all of the rooms, you have the little 4-foot-high, 5-foot-high doors.
Right.
So if you should get bored or be sleepwalking and go through that door, you'll find yourself out in this interesting area around that you can go around the outside of the house all the way around. What is interesting is you have the old adobe. You'll be exposed to all the old adobe work from 1880s. It's really pretty cool in that sense.
Creepy. Can I go in there with a Sharpie? Darkness Radio was here.
I actually would encourage it. I think that'd be great.
Ooh, accident.
But so Adobe's hard on the Sharpie.
Well, it's not my Sharpie nor my Adobe. I don't care. No, that's cool. So speaking of the Crystal Palace room, we've got Tim Fattig here, who's a historian and works with the Crystal Palace. And we had you on the show about a month ago. But hearing this now, have you had a chance to be in this house before, Tim?
Years ago when it was still a B&B.
And did you investigate here at all or have any kind of paranormal activity happen to you?
Just the stories I'd heard secondhand from people. Some were tourists who'd been through for 2-3 days at a time. Others were locals who'd been here more often than I had.
Was it quite often that people were reporting these, paranormal activities?
Oh, regularly.
Really?
I would hear stories about this place as often as I would hear stories about, say, the Birdcage Theater. Mm-hmm. And as far as private residences here in town, this was always the hot spot.
Why? Do we have any idea what made this house so busy with paranormal activity?
It's 2 classic things you look for: the things that happened in the house or the personalities of the people who lived in it. And George W. Buford certainly was a controversial figure here in town. He was an attorney, which is why he was able to build such a nice house. The attorneys and the mine operators always had the best, most expansive houses here in a mining camp like Tombstone, very typical. And he walked a very fine line. He had friends on both sides of the controversy. And by controversy, I mean the feud between the Earp brothers and their friends on one side and the Cowboys on the other side. And when you go through the daily newspaper records of the kinds of people George represented, one of his most frequent clients was a man named Lou Rickabaugh, who ran the gambling concessions at the Oriental Saloon, good friend of the Earp faction, very violent man in court almost on a weekly basis. And on the other hand, he also represented people like Billy Claiborne, one of the Cowboys who was shot and killed outside the Oriental Saloon in 1882. So Buford walked that fine line. He had friends on both sides of the issue. He was on the grand jury that was investigating the Earps following the OK Corral gunfight. And when his cowboy friends would ask him why he let the Earps go, he said, well, they had a point of view. That was one of George's recurring phrases. They had a point of view. A lot of people felt he didn't pick a side, and maybe that's why he's able to have such a nice house here in Tombstone, by having the point of view of his client's money.
All right. Now, that's interesting and compelling, and gives us some rich tapestry to start with. But now you tried to drop a bomb on me during dinner here, John, and I stopped you because I wanted to talk about it on the show. And I love when people do this, Tim, right? They're so jaded by their own property that it's just so matter of fact to them. You know, it's like, oh, here we've got some lunch meat for you guys. We've got some homemade chili, and let me tell you about the skeletons they dug up out of our house. But first, did you want a Mexican Coke? Right? And I'm like, wait, let's go back. You have lunch meat? And no. So lean in closer to your microphone, John, or Catherine, whichever one of you want to tell this story. But and were you aware skeletons were brought out of this house, Tim?
Second, third hand, I'd heard that. Never.
Well, now you get to hear it fourth hand. John's going to share it with us. When did this happen? Before you owned it?
So when we were in the process of buying, I guess we already closed on it and we owned it. It's interesting how it happened in a way, because actually it was Lydia, right, Catherine, that was with me. We were down in the basement. And we're just kind of down there looking around, and we can show you guys later. It is definitely creepy down there. But at any rate, we're down there, and Lydia goes, "What's that?" And as she's saying that, she's bending over, and she comes back with what frankly looked like a human lower jawbone. But because of the way my mind works, I'm like, I guess somebody had a gorilla or a great ape or something here at the house. And
I want to know about John's family tree.
And,
it looks like a great ape.
Lydia was like, I don't know, it looks kind of like a human jaw. And by the way, it was like half of a jaw. So it was actually like a lower jaw, but half. At any rate, we brought it up, and we took it right over here to the kitchen sink. And I kind of rinsed it off and thought, it really did look like molars and what you would call a human jaw, but I still in my brain thought, what do I know about bones? Probably some kind of animal, even though it does have like an eye tooth and other. But at any rate, here's what's funny. I left it on the sink, and we had contractors doing a lot of work here, and it vanished. Yeah. So we don't have it to show it to you. I was actually quite sad. We just left
stories from.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to go. But do you want to go into it? Seriously?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, so then I know we should be separated.
No, I like this.
So then I was back east. We're commuting back and forth to New York City, and I was back east, and I was always doing research on the internet. At this point, I was becoming very intrigued. So I would go on Google and what have you, and I'd look for Buford House, and you know how you get your first page results? Well, I'd often be like 20, 30, 40 pages back, just drilling back in distant connected things. And I came across an old article out of one of the newspapers going way back. By way back, I mean, 20 years, 25 years ago. A woman by the name of Brenda Rieger lived here, and she was in the Reagan administration. She was a reasonably high cabinet post official in the Reagan administration, and she also lived here and owned the Buford House. And in this article, the whole point of the article that was in the newspaper was about these skeletons that were being unearthed from the basement. So that was a newspaper article from, say, 1985 or something like that. And my conclusion was, therefore, that this bone was simply something that had fallen out. We have dirt walls down there. So what had probably happened is they had eroded, and this had simply fallen out. Now, I don't honestly, we have the article, and that would have the exact quantity, but let's call it, say, 4 to 6 skeletons that they removed. And I'm presuming that what had happened is that in the dirt wall that had fallen, this had simply fallen out of the wall and was simply a remnant or something that hadn't, been exposed before. And in the newspaper article, it had theories about whether it had been Chinese workmen or it could have been, because, I don't know, guys, so we had Chinatown, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a whole big part of Tombstone history is Chinatown. And so pretty much the area below 3rd Street, a lot of it fell within Chinatown, and so one theory was that this could have been related to that, although George Buford, in other words, I guess the question would be, when he built the house, did he simply build it over, the remains that had already been there, or did the remains somehow end up down there while he owned the house? That we don't know.
Maybe somebody that didn't pay his fees.
Maybe, or yeah.
Now that's pretty remarkable, Tim. Right? You start to hear these stories, and that even makes more sense to why there would be so much activity here. They're finding bodies in the basement.
Oh, absolutely.
Is that normal in the town of Tombstone? What?
Well, I was just going to add. So that is, that particular story about the skeletons, as far as I know, is never really talked about. That's a historical event that's in the newspaper that's documented, but I don't think I've ever heard it come up. It's just an isolated thing. You also, of course, had the death of children here, right? The Bufords had several children that passed away, unfortunately, here, because in those times, diphtheria, whooping cough, things like that were often devastating. So you had 3 children that died here in the house as well. So some investigators feel that they feel that presence as well. So I'm just saying it's kind of a mixed bag of...
But there's certainly a lot to choose from on why there would be kind of activity going on.
Right, and then you have the George Daves, Petra story from the attempted murder of Cleopatra Edmonds across the street. So that's another sort of classic story. So, George Daves shot himself and killed himself after that event. And, of course... do
you guys hear the door opening behind me? All right. Somebody's coming into your home, John.
It's a human this time.
Catherine, all right, good.
So Catherine, by the way, would fill you in. I would like her to just mention that I have not personally experienced this. She has, with both relatives and guests that have visited, when trying to dissuade them, if you will, because when we have people come here, we don't want to go to a hotel. We'll be like, no, believe me, it's fine.
Yeah.
So she'll try to dissuade them about any fear, right. and when she does that, well, you explain.
Well, yes, I try to calm their fears and say, hey, it's been really quiet lately. I don't even know if the house is really haunted anymore. It's been super quiet, and as soon as I say that, I hear this. And it has happened a few times, and it's right after I say it's not haunted. Don't be afraid. And it's 2 knocks, and actually one was in this dining room, and we heard the knocks coming from behind you, Dave, like kind of where that bathroom. Seriously, it was in that area, and it wasn't.
Just 2.
Yeah, not the Terminator.
Okay,
Mike. But no, and the walls are all adobe. And I cannot tell where they come from. You can't knock on them. And so, but it's a very distinct knock, knock. And I've heard that in the house too, with many years, like when I'm sleeping, sometimes behind my head while I'm sleeping. But mostly when I try to tell visitors, don't be afraid, nothing's going to harm you here. And I don't even think it's haunted anymore. So.
And it's a very documented event of that very type. Just 2 months ago, when friends of ours from New York City were here, she again made a reference to that because they were scaredy cats, and in fact they were staying at the Pink Adobe because they wouldn't stay in here. And when she made mention of the fact you made a smart aleck remark, what was it?
Yes.
So
I was like, if you're here, please let yourself be known. Are you going to show yourself? And then we left to go to dinner. We didn't stick around, and then John will tell the rest.
Right. So here's the thing. So we actually had a pregnant pause where we waited. Nothing happened, and then we exited and we went up to the depot to have dinner. Now, what's interesting is we sat down, we no sooner ordered some appetizers, and the alarm system was going off. So I have the alarm company calling, you have interior motion going off, and we're like, oh, good grief. And this is all of a total of 15 minutes after this challenge was issued. So Tommy drove me down, one of our guests. We were up in his car. He drove me down here. We immediately got up from the table. They stayed. Gail and Catherine stayed. Tommy and I came here. We come in. Everything's perfectly fine. Okay, great. We go back to the depot, order dinner. 10 minutes later, the alarm company's calling again. You've got another motion detector in another room going off. So we then
irritated the ghosts.
And so I came back, nothing. But here's where it got very interesting for me. I didn't have time to do it then, but when I got back to New York City, I went back through all the data logs from all of the phones. When I did that, I found amazing things. Basically, what I found in those logs was that again, sharp temperature changes. When I say sharp, I mean, say, about 7 degrees in temperature over, say, a 90-second total span of time, swinging down and then back up again. Also, humidity swinging pretty sharply. Less so on others, but like, say, here in the dining room, a very sharp, noticeable amount. What I think is interesting about that is then I also see the magnetic information change pretty sharply, but any of the linear acceleration and other sensor inputs not changing. So what that tells me is that there's a magnetic field change in the vicinity of the device, the sensor, because otherwise if the sensor had, like on that stalk, as you can see, we have them on these stalks. So the slightest motion, that one's moving a little bit from us banging the table, that I can see clearly. If I see that at the same time that the magnetic information is changing, I know it's a correlation and it's real motion. If I see magnetic information or RF or other information changing, but linear acceleration on all the axes is perfectly constant, then or if gravity is changing. So if I see the gravity side of it feel as if it's feeling a change in gravity, but yet magnetic is stable, then I know again that it is an actual gravimetric change, not affecting actual motion. So
I think he's just making these words up. Gravimetric. Bullshit. I don't believe it's a word. Google it quick. No, that's amazing that your cell phones are doing all this work.
That's correct. The cell phones are actually amazing. Modern cell phones, the sensors in them are amazingly sensitive and accurate. So honestly,
so remember that tonight, Tim, when you're laying in bed and all of a sudden this guy's alarm's going to go off. We have a temperature change and a heat anomaly taking place in that room. You know what's going to happen? They're getting in our heads because we have to spend 2 nights in this place, right? And you know what's going to happen? Eventually, at the end of this ride, it's going to be like, it's just old man Goodspeed, right? We're going to yank the mask off of the killer clown ghost, and it's John.
Yeah.
And Catherine's in the basement with the wires pulling a Brady Bunch ghost hunt thing on us. She's got the little harmonica in the basement. I'm starting to see through their charade, Tim.
Oh, no way.
That's pretty cool. A bunch of now, you've never had a chance to get in here, Stacy. You've heard all of these stories. Doesn't it suck you're not going to be here the next 2 nights?
Well, I thought maybe somebody might want to go.
I would like you to investigate for a couple hours tonight. I'd like you to check it out.
Investigate.
And let us know what you find. And oh, wait a minute, hold on. Patricia with a Z is over there alerting me to the fact that one of the sensors is going off.
Oh,
yeah. Is it just? Well, that's because you keep putting your hand by it.
Keep putting your hand by it.
Yeah, every time you do. Yeah, now the other side. Oh.
Science.
Okay, magnetic girl. See, look at Link's doing it too. So you've not been in here. You hear this kind of activity taking place. Are there other homes in town that are known to be pretty active?
Well, I'm going to tell you the truth. I haven't been in any place in Tombstone yet that I haven't found activity. Now, some, like yours, is definitely more active than others, but I haven't come up empty-handed anywhere I've investigated in this town.
Really?
I've done some of the commercial buildings. I've done some of the homes.
Aside from the dramatic dark man ghost that leapt out the window and dove at you, which is pretty poop-your-pants worthy, right? Where has been the most active place you've investigated, and what is the creepiest? I want the scariest moment you've ever had. And don't give me this, I'm a paranormal investigator, I'm not frightened, I go out looking for that. There's a moment we all have where our butt goes.
Now, seriously, there's only one place that I've ever been, and it was here in Tombstone. It's a house that's over on 9th Street.
Yes, do tell.
It used to be a bed and breakfast as well. And we went in there because at the time my family lived in there, and they had 4 kids, one of them very young, like 5 years old. And what they were telling us,
you have short people in Tombstone. She's holding her hand like 2 feet out the floor, about 5 years old. No wonder the little doors upstairs are so short.
But what they were telling us,
all right.
But what they were telling us is maybe they turned lights off, they'd come on, vice versa. But what they really noticed is when that youngest kid would be playing with toys, other toys moved along with them. So we think in our heads it's a kid. So we go in and we set up, we're doing this investigation, and we were doing just some, little spurt EVPs and going back and listening. one of the things that happened is we catch a woman. We're asking about, you're always playing with this little boy. Can you tell us who you are? And we got a woman's voice that said, I want his soul. That's pretty creepy to me. We caught a picture of a woman who was, instead of vertical, she's horizontal in the picture, and it looks more like a horror movie picture, like eyes rolled in the back of the head. I've never caught a photo like that until that house.
Where are those photos? Can we see them?
I don't have them with me, but I can get them for you. I can get them for you. I do have them,
Can
yes,
you?
but
Once
not
you get
with
home
me
and
tonight.
get your picture document up and start altering images?
No, I will not alter images.
Come, this picture looks like Daryl Hannah from Splash. Well, that's pretty cool. Not cool, I guess, for the family. I want his soul. That is pretty. What was your response then? What do you do? Do you just hightail it out the door?
We kind of got a few things like that, and I'm not really into the dark side of the paranormal. I'm not out looking for demons and stuff. Mm-hmm. I just want to talk to the average Joe that lived here and see what they're doing now. So we kind of packed it up and told the people, hey, it was fun. It was real. It wasn't real fun. We're getting out of here.
Wait a minute. So you go in and drop the bomb on them? You might have a demon. It wants your child's soul, but shit, we got to get over to Denny's for dinner. That's what you just did to this family?
No. We did a cleansing on the house. We asked them if they owned it. They rented it. I told them, personally, I wouldn't live here, and I live in a haunted house.
Landlord.
So they moved.
Moving on up. All right.
But no, we had a lot of really bad things happen that night. We were getting scratches. That's the only place I've ever investigated that I came out with scratches.
Go investigate Tim's room with him. You'll get scratched. Yeah. He's very passionate. He's a passionate lover.
I'm a passionate man.
Yes. So, well, that's pretty. That's off the charts kind of activity.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the one and only place.
Have you ever seen something inhuman? And I don't mean at closing time.
I've seen them, yes. We actually got the chance to do Eastern State Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm. We're in Tombstone. I mean here.
Yeah. So I've seen one there I'll tell you my very first ghost story here in Tombstone. So we moved here from Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. There's no grocery store here, so we thought, we'll open a grocery store. The town needs it. Mm-hmm. So we're here a few months. We get the store up and running. I know maybe a handful of people here. And my daughter was in the Navy, so I'm working in the grocery store. It's about 8:30 at night. I'm the only one in there. And she calls me, so I'm talking to her, but I'm watching the door of the store. It opens. A man in 1800s clothes walked in. I didn't think a lot about it. We live in Tombstone.
Right. There's a lot of characters walking around. Right. We had two of them that we interviewed today walking around.
So I just said, hey, how are you tonight? The man looked at me. He tipped his hat. He said, howdy. He turned around and started walking down the first aisle of our grocery store and vanished. And I jump up. I'm like, Felicia, did you hear me talking to somebody? She goes, yeah, Mom, I heard a man say howdy. I'm like, there's nobody here with me.
What she doesn't tell you is he grabbed a pack of Lucky Strikes, a Penthouse magazine, and some Magnum condoms, and then vanished.
Oh, no.
So it was a cowboy just walked in. But what did that building used to be?
The area where we live was part of the tent city here in Tombstone, so there wouldn't have been buildings there. It would have been just families in tents, miners in tents. Where we're at is kind of right behind Chinatown over there.
And
what was Chinatown?
Your daughter heard that. But that's not really an elemental, though. I mean, or a dark presence. I mean, have you had any of those in this town besides the I Want Your Soul house?
I haven't.
Okay. All right.
I got a question for John real quick. It's okay. I can lean in like this. John, when we were driving into town today, you had mentioned that there's quite a bit of limestone in this town. You mentioned that limestone kind of came into play when it came to mining. Mm-hmm. And one of the things when we talk about paranormal activity happens to do with electromagnetic force, and there happens to be quite a bit of electromagnetic force when it comes to limestone foundations. And the more electromagnetic force, the more limestone, the more there tends to be hauntings. So let me ask you this. Being that you've developed this system with this house and with other areas, do you think that maybe the reason that there's more hauntings here in Tombstone than any other place may not necessarily be the history, but maybe might be the foundation?
Well, again, I don't want to. I'm very open-minded on the
paranormal side. I guess you could say from a geologic point of view, I certainly think that, remember when I was saying earlier about the magnetic sensors and different things, I certainly have wondered if it couldn't be possible that the mineralization in Tombstone does play an effect. I'm sorry to go back to that, but even when lightning goes off, that's picked up. So when I was talking about, say, magnetic field changes, when big thunderstorms are going, the phones all notice that as magnetic activity whenever there's a lightning bolt, for instance. So, in the Tombstone Hills here behind us, one of the things that we noticed is that, when you get strikes in the hills, they often have a pretty dramatic, kind of spectacular, the bolt of lightning, if you will, is a lot different than you'd see on the East Coast. Yeah, sometimes it'll have like almost grain to it. So they're kind of fascinating to watch, and they're a lot different than what we see back east. And so that has to do with the mineralization. And like I said, you had these magma intrusions that came into the limestone here. And that, of course, is why, like I was saying earlier, that's what allowed the silver, gold, copper, a lot of the minerals that make them economical to mine, or what makes them economical to mine, is when you have a matrix that water, and it all comes down to water. It's the presence of water going through that volcanic vein that leaches out those minerals and then redeposits them in the carbonates. So
see, it's old man Goodspeed trying to get us out of his old silver and gold mines. Trying to him out. We found a big gold mine underneath the house. We got to get rid of the darkness radio, fellas.
Hey, and Dave,
yes.
We have the Brooklyn Bridge for sale as well.
I'll take two. Do you have two? I like them in bookends. Tim, I don't want to leave you out on this, and I know time's getting away from us this evening. You hear stories like this, and certainly you've been involved with the Crystal Palace for how long?
Indirectly, almost 20 years. More recently, about the last 6 months or so.
All right. And when you hear this, I mean, does the Crystal Palace kind of live up to this kind of activity on a regular basis of hauntings and strange phenomena taking place?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the original properties of the town. It goes back to 1882. It was open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like a Vegas casino, because the miners were always going to work and leaving work, and the stores and the saloons and the gambling houses accommodated them 24/7. As did the red light district. And when you went into the gambling houses, just as today, no clocks. You didn't know if it was 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. And a lot of the people there were violent, and they were aggressive toward each other. Racism, casual misogyny. And in the atmosphere itself, there was a negativity. In the Oriental Saloon, in the Crystal Palace, the Birdcage Theater, these were not good places. These were not good people, colorful people we love to research and talk about and argue about who shot who and why. But the reality is these were not distinguished people. And when that much negativity and that negative energy just hangs there over a century later, you're going to find residuals of that. And when you go to these places that didn't burn and the original buildings are there, and you can find the original floorboards and copper ceilings and woodwork, and you wonder how much of that is inhabiting the physical property itself. You can't help but wonder that.
Have you ever hit luminol on the floor and then light it up just to see how much blood is around that place?
That's a terrifying idea.
I'm just curious.
Someone should do that. I don't want to be the someone. Someone should do that. I do not want to be that someone.
How many deaths do you think over the history of that location? What's it? 130 years? 140 years?
I've yet to find a direct example of anyone being killed in the confines of the Crystal Palace, but given the nature of the business where gambling took place, where people did business, drinking, smoking, plotting murders, no doubt quite a few. Was it a causation for...
When I was young, I still think we could get a couple of deaths in there.
It is Friday night. It is Friday night. They do have a band, absolutely. But no, as a causative agent, the place certainly saw its share of responsibility, certainly bears its share of responsibility, as you could say, for the Oriental or any of the other gambling houses in town. These were where the darker elements came to meet, plan their business, and if it was legal, terrific, and if it wasn't, well, we'll get it done even faster. And one of the things John talked about, finding the remains here, that is something that recurs so often in the 20th century history of Tombstone. A prominent Hispanic family owned an apartment building on Fremont Street in the 60s and 70s. And one of their patriarchs of the family told me about 15 years ago that when they were laying concrete, one of the dozers came in and was pulling up pieces of coffin and bones, and literally a priest had to come and bless the proceedings before any of the workers would return to do that. These The convenience store, the national chain convenience store here in town.
The Circle K?
No, the other Circle K.
Oh, yes.
When they were putting their parking lot in, same story. When they were doing work there, people were finding bits of bone and saying, well, that's just something you have here in these kinds of towns. No, it's not. It's weird. No, investigate it. And they just laid the concrete over it. It's something that recurs so often in the last 40 years of development. People encounter these things, sort of shrug and, well, back to work, got a deadline. Let's just keep going. Let's not think about what we've just run across. So much of that.
Wait a second, though, John. People are pulling up body parts out of your basement. Shouldn't the cops have at least come in to make sure that, like, the last owners didn't just bury a few neighbors they didn't like in the basement?
You would think, but instead you just have a newspaper article and everybody goes, wow, that's pretty cool and interesting. And
wow.
But, Tim, speaking of which...
If we don't get back, you know where to find us. The basement of the Buford House. Old man Goodspeed's going to put us down. It would have worked, too, if it weren't for you kids in that damn radio show. I'm out of here. Yeah, I don't. This is not the. There's a lot of dark history in this town.
Well, it really is. I was just going to say, Tim could tell you, Boot Hill. It is a fascinating place. You go through there, you look at all those graves, and those are the graves that we sort of kind of know where people are, right? I mean, the cemetery actually had boundaries that may have gone a bit beyond what we currently call the prim and proper Boot Hill Cemetery, and for that matter, the city cemetery. But you have these colorful characters, as Tim was
there's
saying.
so much skepticism about Boot Hill. People, their tourism reflex kicks in, and they say, "Oh, this is some chintzy thrown together thing." There's one absolutely demonstrably real original grave marker out there. It's that of George Martin Peale. Martin Peale, who was shot and killed by cowboys about 15 miles from here in 1882. There's a sketch of his grave marker printed in a Phoenix newspaper in 1882. That marker's still there. A lot of the markers are modern replacements, and a lot of them simply say unknown because the original info is gone. The question about Boot Hill is not, is it real or not? It's the scale of Boot Hill. Did it cross the highway? Probably. Did it go down the hill from where it is now toward the national convenience store chain, toward the residences there on that curve on Fremont? More than likely. So people say, well, was Boot Hill real? Yes. The scale of it is what we're still finding out. It was much bigger than any documentary source.
Agreed, Tim. And it is. It's fascinating. I collect old postcards or any photograph I can get, and you do have anchors like the Peale grave, China Mary's grave. So you do have enough anchors that it's very real. And,
absolutely.
And a lot of those graves go all the way back with old photographs and what have you. So
We've
you definitely
lost control of the show. It's now
That's all right. It's kind of
Tim and John show down there. Let's go out and take a nap. These guys are good. They don't need us.
I want to know if China Mary's in China Grove.
That's right. Oh, China Grove. Virgil Earp, though, was shot outside the Crystal, right?
He was on 5th Street, right between the Crystal and the Oriental Saloon. The Earps never knew it as the Crystal Palace. It was called the Golden Eagle Brewery while they were here, and renamed the Crystal about 4 months after the Earps left Arizona.
And did Virgil die there?
No, he survived. Luckily, the first doctor that got hold of him was George Goodfellow, who was a pioneer in gunshot injuries. He had a lot of test cases to work on here and in Charleston. And he was also a pioneer in what we would call bulletproof armor today. He tended to a cowboy who was killed in the gunfight in March of 1882. I say gunfight. It wasn't. A deputy sheriff went up to him and shot him in the head, neck, and shoulders with a double-barrel shotgun. What Dr. Goodfellow noticed was that when he was...
That when you shoot somebody in the head, neck, and shoulders, they die?
He did successfully die. He did. 100% fatality rate.
Right.
The thing he noticed, though, was that the buckshot didn't penetrate the silk scarf the cowboy was wearing, and he jotted down some notes about silk's effectiveness against bullets, and his article was cited in about a 1915 publication that became the copyright for the original bulletproof vests.
No wonder so many swingers use silk sheets, Tim.
Yep.
So if, like, the lover's husband breaks in and takes a shot, you have a good shot of surviving it.
That's right.
That is wild that was fun. So the silk, what was it? Was it just so slippery it was causing the bullet to deflect, or what was the...
The buckshot didn't embed in the injury. When he removed the silk scarf the cowboy was wearing, the buckshot simply came out of the silk itself. It didn't pass through it as it did the cloth shirt he was wearing.
So the deputy just shot him in the head, shoulder, and neck.
Shotgun shells are cheap. Trials are expensive.
Wow. I guess so. Interesting. Well, this is a family-friendly town to live in back in the day, Tim. So those rare instances when I watch an old Clint Eastwood movie and I thought, yeah, I'd love to live back in those days. I'm just realizing what a tenderfoot wussy I really am. Especially when it's like these, it's 190 degrees in the shade in Tombstone, Arizona.
Yeah.
First of all, how are they, I know now where they wear boots. It's so that they have a place to stick their nutsack. Because I'm draking. It's so hot outside, they got to go somewhere, Tim.
Right.
But it is unbelievable. The assless chaps for the cooling of the air.
They're all assless.
Oh, right, but that's why. It's for the cooling effect.
Right.
This is you think this would be kind of cool to see. The movies really kind of play up that angle of kind of the romanticizing the weirdness of this, but it's really a violent territory. This probably wasn't the kind of place you wanted to settle down much, right? Unless you were really trying to make your way in the gold and silver and copper. Or you were knuckleheads from New York who had nothing better to do but buy up houses in Arizona. John, well, maybe.
We're partial to HBO. We're kind of partial to the HBO series Deadwood as far as the realism and the relentlessness of the lifestyle and the culture that these mining camps engendered. And people say it all the time. We want the real history. We want the real thing. HBO canceled Deadwood after 3 seasons. It was too real for people. They say they want the real thing, but they like the romance of the westerns from the 50s and 60s because it sugarcoats a little bit. And this was a hard place to live. People routinely left their families back east or back in California because when they read about the conditions here and said it's no place for women or children. The schools were rather thinly attended for the size of the town. The churches were even more poorly attended. This was not a civilized place, and civilizing elements were always up against it here. Endicott Peabody, in his diary, when he was sent out here in late 1882 to build the Episcopal Church, Reverend Endicott Peabody from Massachusetts, he talks in his diary on a daily basis about how hard and hard-headed the community is. No one wants to support his church-building efforts. He tries to start a baseball team. Any little civilizing influence, and people look at him like he's from outer space. This was not that kind of a town. You came here to make your $1 million, take your money, and say, now I can afford to get out of here, and you got out of here. And
was it just hard to get sponsors to buy the back of the jerseys for baseball, the Rough Riders?
Too many bullet holes. It was hard to read in between the...
Come on, boys, I'm putting together a softball team. What a great history. You guys, thank you so much for first of all, opening up your doors to us, John and Catherine, for allowing us into the Buford. And we'll talk in future episodes about what happens or doesn't happen, and we may debunk this place that you two are just completely lunatics. There's still that opportunity. But, of course, if you threaten me with a scorpion, I'll tell people whatever you want me to tell them.
Right.
But thank you both for allowing us into
Thanks
your home.
for coming.
Oh, yes, our pleasure.
A couple of nights here. And Stacy, if people come to Tombstone, is there a good tour they should take?
Oh, there's several good tours here.
Thank you. All right, and no, just kidding.
But actually, where I'm at now, even though I run a gift shop during the day, what I'm in was part of the Arcade Hotel. So I've started dabbling with bringing a few people in there. So anybody comes to Tombstone, look me up, and if you want to do the paranormal, we'll do it.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for stopping in. And if people want to see your investigations and pictures, should they check Ghost Hunters of Spirited Tombstone?
Yes.
All right. Very cool. And you can check out our website. We are South Hennepin Investigative Team. Yeah. It's shit, but it's really a good team. We try. Yes. Yeah. And Tim Fattig, our buddy here, historian from the Crystal Palace. If people are interested now, are there ghost hunts allowed at the Crystal Palace?
Oh, absolutely. There are a number of tours, as Stacey was saying, daytime and nighttime. The daily history, the tours, stagecoach tours, walking tours emphasize the building of the town, the fires, the gunfights. But there are evening walking tours as well that go into the paranormal and the unexplained. And that's I encourage people to do both. Get both sides of the story, do your own thinking. And the tour guides here very, very much do their homework.
And how often do they do the virgin sacrifice?
Not often enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it. Live on tape from Tombstone. Thank you all for being a part of our show, tuning in and checking it out. It's been great. I want to thank all of our guests that were part of today's show. It's been fantastic. And, support towns like this. Get out and see the world. Don't just live vicariously through radio shows and TV programs. Go out and see these places before history reclaims them or we bulldoze them over to put up condos. You need to go see these type of places and experience them for yourself, whether you're into the history or the paranormal or both. This is something you've got to experience for yourself, and we want to thank you again, Lincoln, for allowing Tim and I to come experience this. We're so excited to be out here. We plan on getting completely drunk and probably breaking some shit and then being thrown out of town like we're supposed to be when we make it into Tombstone. But thank you, and thank you all. We'll be back again next week. We'll have brand new episodes, and we'll have a phone number you guys can call into to leave messages. And I'll put that up sometime during this week so that if you guys have your own paranormal stories, you can call in and share them with Tim and I. And next week, we'll be back with Theater of the Mind. Today was kind of a special episode, so instead of Theater of the Mind, you got all of these great guests in one comprehensive show. So for that guy on this guy, you've been listening to that show. This is Beyond the Darkness.